All right.
Well, I'm going to go against the grain a little bit here, Dylan. I'm going to go ahead and put my support behind Donald Trump for the GOP's nom in 2024 because I think that would be the easiest W for round 2 for my president, Joseph R. Biden. We put a whooping on Trump in 2020. And we were just getting started, baby. The walls are closing in. January 6th select committees just getting warmed up. Criminal investigations in 2 states, New York and Georgia. If Donald Trump is your nominee and you clowns did this to yourselves, GOP, you're screwed.
There are so many ways that you could punch that argument right through the middle, IRI.
It's the problem of anyone who has a moral conscience.
Let me tell you guys how democracy works. You don't like a law. You work to get people to see things the way you do. You get people elected.
Two wolves and a sheep voting on what they each
Okay. Stop. Everybody, stop. Okay. Wait. Let's get this thing sorted, guys.
I haven't seen that as much.
Hello,
Canadian conservatives.
Yeah. Hey, Dylan.
How's everybody doing?
Been watching that convoy.
How's everybody doing?
Doing all right.
Fantastic.
How are you, sir?
I am doing fantastic as well, and we'll be even doing better after I make the special announcement tonight, which you will all have to just wait in suspense for. But I also want to thank you all for coming and making time during everybody's very busy Fridays. I know you all had to beat away many dates, appointments with the Pope, kings across the land to make it here today. And so I appreciate you all taking time out of your extremely busy schedules to be here today. I know that Christian Walker spent all day putting up those 2 photos behind him, and I appreciate him putting in that prep for today's show.
Dylan, Watson, not Walker.
Oh, Walker. I'm sorry.
Watson, not Walker.
See, you did a lot more prep than me. You got the 2 photos up. I didn't even remember everyone's name. So thank you for doing.
And have yet to correct yourself.
Watson.
Thank you very much.
Christian Walker is a nightmare.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, I would like to thank you all for being here. If you're having any trouble hearing me, please adjust my volume in your Discord. Bring it up if possible. Make it max or move it up if it's hard to hear me, because when I'm talking, no one else is talking for moderation purposes. Let's go into the rules, and that is the first rule. When I am talking, no one else is talking. That is not because I'm going to today make the really based take on the estate tax, okay? Which I am a huge fan of, which I know many of you are not, right? I will not be talking about the estate tax or any of the issues today. So, just when I'm talking, quiet down. I don't care if you're in the middle of a back and forth. You shut up. Makes my job 10 times easier. I will mute you if necessary. Don't take it personally. It's all just business, baby. Second one. We will not go after people's immutable characteristics, okay? If you go after somebody from being Canadian, which I know we all love to do, we cannot do that to the one lovely Canadian who has come today so we can talk about one of our issues, our token Canadian, okay? You cannot go after him and bully him for being a maple drinker, okay? And thirdly, that's the only immutable attack we're going to allow today, is what I just said, okay? Nobody else. Do as I say, not as I do. Other than that, there will be a small intro period of about 1 minute. Try to keep it short. It is just to establish your position, not for you to give like a large soliloquy for everybody to then have to respond to your essay. Just establish your position with maybe a few key points. Keep it short. Same goes for outros. In between, though, there will be an open period where you can go back and forth. Try your best to follow our rules and make sure you give other people time to talk and keep interruptions to a minimum, but I will not police your kindness to one another, okay? So don't look to me if somebody said something to you mean unless it goes outside of the immutable characteristics. But if you do go so low that it disgusts me too much, I might intervene, but it puts me in an awkward position. Other than that, I think that's most of the rules, except for one last thing, and that is if you find it difficult to interact with a panel space and you can't get a word in, raise your hand. I will write your name down. But please wait, because I'm going to let the conversation move on naturally. I'm going to let people develop back and forths, 1v1s, 2v2s during all of this, right? And I will eventually make sure you get the time to talk. But that eventually is a key word. Don't think that by raising your hand, you just got the magic free ticket to talking time, okay? Wonderful. Is there any confusion about any of the rules or any questions? No. And if not, then we're going to have everybody introduce themselves shortly and quickly if possible. I'm going to start in the bottom left-hand corner with a Hippy Dippy Recruitment Show alumni. We're having more and more of them on the main show these days. Rhizome.
Thank you for that, Dylan. Making me feel so proud over here. I feel like I'm like a special kid that you're helping through the program or something. But yeah, I'm Rhizome. What's up, everybody? Thank you, Dylan. I stream on Twitch. It's mostly just like cozy, critical, political, and philosophical discourse with a good dash of irony and absurdism and some contention built in. So yeah, check it out if you want to. And thanks for having me back, Dylan.
Happy to have you. I see a few people asking about my shirt. It says I voted for Hunter Biden's dad. If anybody was curious in chat. We're going to move it now on to Taft.
Hey, I go by Taftage online. You can follow me at Taftage on Twitter. You should probably see a little name with how it's spelled on my screen. I try to do center-right sort of politics. I'm pro freedom of enterprise, generally for like limited government and whatnot. Try to present a version of conservatism that is maybe palatable and interesting to people on Twitch. So yeah, looking forward to a good discussion and to the next person.
Wonderful. I'm now going to throw it over to MPU, also known as More Perfect Union.
Everybody, I'm the More Perfect Union. I stream occasionally on Twitch and, participate in panels and things like this. I'm a constitutional conservative. I've been around a long time. I've seen things go well. I've seen things go badly. And I'm not necessarily opposed to like social policy. I just think we need to make sure that it's always rooted somewhere within the Constitution. So most of my contention with people is not what they want to do, but simply how they want to get it done, how it gets affected. So anyway, I'm looking forward to being a part of this. Some of you guys I know, and the rest of you people I will get to know. Thanks very much.
Happy to have you here. Now we're going to throw it to C-SPAN's favorite correspondent. I am really important. IRI.
Awesome. Dylan, thank you for having me. It's always fun to be on the Hippy Dippy with all the rock stars of Twitch politics. I go by I'm Really Important. I am a constitutional, liberal, anarcho-Capulet Bidenist, and I focus on C-SPAN. We like to see what's going on in the House and the Senate, what our elected officials are up to. We'd love to have you. Midterms are heating up. The people of Texas are already voting and early voting right now, and their primaries coming up on March 1st. So we're in midterm season, baby. Let's go.
Happy to have you here, IRI. Now we're going to throw it over to the legislative queen, Josie Rose.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. It has been a while since I've been on a Hippy Dippy, but I am back now. You can find me on Twitch TV, Josie Rose, or not dot, there's no dot there, Josie Rose C. And you can also be a part of our Discord at Josie Rose, at the Love Nest. Sorry, it's been a while. I've been working like 55-hour weeks for the last 2 weeks, so I'm just like a little drained. So I'm really excited to like let my hair down and talk about this stuff. So thank you for having me.
Happy to have it. Now throwing over to the comfy crusader, Lumiru.
Hi, it's me, Lumi. I'm an intersectional feminist that talks about a range of topics: women's liberation, men's liberation, sexual liberation, all of the liberation. Tomorrow we'll be talking about some topics related to sexuality and philosophy, so I'd love to have you there. Stream on Twitch at twitch.tv twitch.tv/Lumiru. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Lumiru, Luv, Lumiru Love, and looking forward to the conversation. Oh, politically, I'm like leftist, but figuring it out, somewhere in that direction. So good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you. I'm now going to throw it over to Mr. Watson. I'm just going to say that. Mr. Watson, a mainstream star that we've brought on today.
You're too kind. Yeah, so I'm Christian Watson. I make political content on YouTube, political commentary, social commentary with a twinge of philosophy, I like to say. My politics is I'm a conservatarian, meaning I believe that in the American sense that our traditions are very important, but if we're going to preserve them, we also have to respect individual liberty, individualism. And so I look forward to having a good conversation tonight.
Happy to have you. And now we throw it over to another Hippy Dippy alumni. We have two Hippy Dippy Recruitment Show alumni. We have two on today. Bryce.
Wow, you make me just feel like I'm on a taxi squad or something on like the B team of some professional sports team. But thank you. It's good to be here. It's my first time being here. I'm Bryce Live. You can find me on my Twitch, Bryce Live, BRIS Live. I consider myself what's called a progressive conservative. It's going to be something that's going to blow people's minds, but I tend to align myself more closely with like an idea of like paternalism. I think I try to be a little more pragmatic and like realistic about the nuance and things like that. So I try to bring the cognizance that like progressive policies are good, but we still need to preserve things like capitalism, hierarchy, class, and all things that are great about our societies.
Happy to have you here, and I love the suit. Okay, we're going to go into the first topic, and we're going to start it off hot. The trucker protest takes another turn as Trudeau uses the Emergency Act to, in a quell or quote-unquote deal with, however you want to frame it, with the protests in Canada, the truckers' protests, as arrests are being made on the ground and more police gather and move in. So my question is, what do you think of Trudeau taking this action and of the arrests being made across Canada? I'm going to start with the Canadian, Bryce.
All right. Well, in terms of Canada, I think Trudeau overstepped, and I think he showed in the Parliament speech yesterday, when they got into the debate about the usage of the Emergencies Act. And I think he showed that he really had no idea what he was doing when he enacted that. He might have thought about his father, because his father was pretty famous for just watch me. He didn't.
Okay, your internet seems to be cutting in and out for a second. So I'm going to move on and we're going to come back to you if that's possible, okay? We're going to throw it over to Christian.
Yeah, so just to put it simply, Justin Trudeau is a textbook example of a tyrant. He is someone who does not worry about justifying his positions in morality or anything outside of his own arbitrary power. The Canadian truckers are doing something that is quite well. They are resisting an unjust imposition upon their bodies for a profession that doesn't even really interact with a lot of people in the handling and shipping of their goods, truckers. And I think that, any government that does not respect its people is not a legitimate government. So I think that he has overstepped the bounds. Emergency powers have been historically used to suspend, Gorgio Angama called it the state of exception, to suspend the normal rules of things and to institute totalitarianism. And that should really scare anyone who cares about a free society, in my opinion.
Okay, next we're going to throw it over to IRI.
Well, I think things are being blown out of proportion when it comes to what can and can't be done with the Emergencies Act. So I'm happy to chat about that with people. But boy, I was happy to see the trucker Chaz get destroyed today. These people were reckless. They were endangering children by using them as human shields. And I find that disgusting. I can think of some other groups around the world that use kids as human shields. And look at the 13 people arrested in Coutts, where they were threatening to kill police officers if they tried to break up their blockade. So spare me on it's just a bunch of families grilling and sitting in the hot tub. These people were dangerous, reckless, and they're lucky the government treated them like they did, because if this was a First Nations protest, whew, I would have gone a lot different.
Throwing it over to Josie Rose.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this actually, because I agree kind of with the point what IRI is saying is the idea of like, if you look at like American protests with like the Black Lives Matter where tear gas was thrown, like the second like people who are a minority class start protesting or blocking freeways, the conservatives are the first people to be like, oh my gosh, they should protest a different way. They're hurting the economy. They're hurting commerce. And they get all upset about it. But the thing about it is this has been going on for 18 days plus, and it is hurting the economy of Canada. And the thing that they have the ability to just carte blanche break the law and just say, hey, we're breaking the law. It's a protest, so we get to do this. This is what needed to happen. I'm not familiar with emergency powers. I will take a look at those type of things a little later, but this needed to happen. This should have happened sooner. People blocking roads with heavy machinery and not allowing commerce to happen. Like, this is not just, hey, we're arresting truckers. This is protecting their national interest of actually making sure they have trade. So I agree that this should be happening and this should have happened sooner. So yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to Lumiru.
So, as for the emergency powers, I don't know that I agree with freezing assets and the whatnot because I think that's an overstep in terms of government having more covert power. I would rather them go forward and arrest people more openly and have due process for them. I think that's quite important. But yeah, absolutely. I do think that this protest has gone on quite a long while and it is causing issues. It seems statistically, looking at the polls, that generally Canadians were not supporting it, as well as 90% of Canadian truckers were already vaccinated. And so to act as if this is something that is really the truckers coming forward as a labor movement, I think is very unfair. It seems quite clear to me that it's the leaders in it were more were a lot of them weren't truckers, and that's concerning to me. So I think that this needed to happen, and that's my position.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to Rhizome.
Yeah, I've of two minds, I suppose. Like, obviously, the protest kind of got away. Like, there really were no clear-cut goals. Like, it wasn't really like a workers' movement, as they were saying. It seemed astroturf from the start. So, like, the idea that this was even something that like people wanted or thought was necessary can like be called into question. But when it comes to Trudeau and what he's doing, I really think that this is a sort of ends justify the means argument. And I really don't think that the needs of the many like justify. I don't think that appealing to the needs of the many and outweighing the needs of the few is like really justifiable. And his quote in Parliament was, "We're doing this for families, businesses, and the economy." So just like outright admitting like it's for the flow of money. This could not be dealt with any other law under our system. I don't think people should be punished for that. I think that that's a failing of the system. And we did it because that's what good leadership would do. I mean, it's just an empty platitude. So, like, while the protest was protest, whatever we want to call it, probably should have stopped or should stop, and people aren't supporting it. I don't think the way that it's being done is very moral.
Okay, and I'm going to throw it to MPU.
Yeah, so I think you have to really seriously look at this and say, should he have done what he did? Is it an overreach? And what in fact was the overarching problem, right? What was the thing people were trying to get done? This convoy has been going on for several weeks now, and they were pretty clear about what they stated at the outset. And I know people like IRI and others on the left say that, well, these people, they're threatening people's lives. Yeah, there are certainly some criminal elements in there. And I think it's true to say that the longer that this has gone on, the longer the media attention has been on this, right? Just like BLM with Antifa and a lot of things that went on in Portland and stuff like it, Chaz in Seattle. The longer things go on where it seems like people are sticking their thumb in the eye of the government, then more people are going to be interested in sort of hijacking or glomming onto that, right? So I think the things that people are saying are problematic about what's going on in terms of behavior. Those are fringe elements. Those are people that are simply taking advantage of what's going on. Now, it is important to understand that they're in Ottawa. They've come across the country, okay, and then they have listed a set of demands that were actually pretty reasonable. And as I think Christian said earlier, in his opening, they don't interact with the public that much in their job. And they were basically told, screw you, I'm the government, we're going to force it down your throat. Okay, that's not the way a responsible government who is responsive to his citizens acts. They could have said, let's come together, let's have a consensus meeting, let's talk about why we need to do this or how we can modify that behavior. They didn't do it. And what you're seeing in Ottawa with the blocking of traffic and the bridges and everything else, this is really a second or third order effect of the government not being responsive to begin with.
Now over to Taft.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what I've heard on the panel so far. I mean, I think that when you have such a mass movement of people who are frustrated with mandates, I think that the appropriate response is not to enact emergency powers and begin freezing people's bank accounts. That seems like an incredible overstep of the government. And it's a really scary precedent that this is what you're going to be doing anytime people in your country, citizenry, have issues. I think the appropriate response from Trudeau would be to try to really understand, these issues. And, as people have said, as Lumi said, most truckers are vaccinated. These people aren't crazy conspiracy theorists who are like against vaccines in total. What they want is to lift mandates, and they want to get rid of this COVID tracker app, which is making their business and their lives really difficult. These things sound like the kinds of things that a responsible government needs to work with people on and to, try to fix. And I think the Emergency Power Act is just it's a complete overreach for sure. And I think there are some environments, some protests where it is, appropriate to enact emergency powers. But I think that you are hard pressed to say that this is one of them, especially because, frankly, I think the trucker demands are quite reasonable, quite temperate, and quite moderate. So I think it's a complete overreach and totally unwarranted.
Okay, intro section is done. Is there anyone who wants to?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
Josie,
sorry.
if you wanted
I
to
was
start
trying to
us off.
start real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say as well that the reason that the Emergency Powers Act was like instated was the local police in Ottawa wasn't doing their job. They were very sympathetic to the protesters and weren't enforcing the laws. So it really forced the national government of Canada to actually do something because it wasn't the local control wasn't actually doing their job and actually citing and making sure that these people were moving out of the way. I just
That
wanted to
just
add
sounds to me
See,
again
isn't
like
that
we're
pretty bad?
punishing people for the failings of the government and like the failings of the infrastructure that we all rely on to like make sure to ensure our freedoms. Like, I don't know.
I mean, it seems like there's a popular movement in Canada. A lot of people are incredibly frustrated by these mandates and by this, COVID tracker app. They're very sympathetic to this working class movement. And so we see that with the police, right? And people in general. And so the solution is now suddenly like, well, because people are sympathetic to this movement, we need to crack down, double down hard, and enact emergency powers. That doesn't seem like the solution to me. The solution, when you realize that you've got a sympathetic population, is to think, well, my job is to govern in favor of the people and to enact their will. And so I'm going to, seriously think about what they're asking.
Well,
It's
the will of the
interesting that you
people weren't
aren't-
with the protests, right?
Yeah,
I'm
most
sorry,
people
what?
aren't supportive of this at all.
Yeah.
It's a very small
Well-
group that's supportive.
I
Very
Well, I
mean,
mean,
I
a
don't think
third.
it's,
Look, a third of your population is a significant problem.
yeah, it's
to have
not.
to contend with, right? Most, I'm sorry, Taft, but it usually only takes about 1.5 to 3% of a population who rises up against an existing government that can literally topple a government, can completely break a governmental system. Now, these people are not trying to do that. They're just trying to get their demands heard, and they're not unreasonable. And one
They
second,
are unreasonable.
hang on, one second. And to Josie's point, this isn't the kind of a circumstance where the beatings will continue until morale or compliance improves. Just to be
wait. Before anyone talks, I need to say
a
something.
third from.
The thing is,
I think that's
the
important.
problem
Really
here
quick,
is that
Bryce.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't
He gave us
matter.
a number.
Okay,
I just want to know where that number is coming from.
Wait.
You can go
Okay,
back
wait.
Okay, you
I
can go back
believe
to
it's
the.
mandate support
Okay.
that he's talking about.
Okay.
Stop.
Is that true, MPU?
Stop.
What?
Okay. So we're gonna have Bryce talk because he didn't really get an intro. So when I hear what he has to say quick, then we can go forward with this line of questioning.
Thank you.
Never mind.
All right, MPU. Yeah, where is the third coming from?
Rip.
I tried so hard.
I think I was watching IRI stream today, and somebody actually posted in chat. It said about 2/3 of Canadians were against the truckers, and 1/3 was in support of it. I could be wrong. Yeah, I could be wrong about the actual fact, but that's just a number I pulled out of. I believe it was
I did
IRI
link
stream
a
earlier today.
poll in the group chat if you want to take a look at that.
Yeah, I have a poll that's 32% people support, but only 17
like
strongly support, and like
Yeah.
15% are somewhat. So it's like really only
So that's
17%
the
of people
third.
strongly support. Yeah, but like somewhat
Well,
support is
yeah,
like,
but-
yeah, I guess like they're doing something. But I mean, can we
but,
talk
I mean,
about their
come on, if you at
demands
least
though?
But if you at
Yes,
least
please
empathize
talk
with
about
the
the
thing, right? I
demands.
mean, the
So-
bottom line is, right? So we're still talking roughly 1/3 versus 2/3, right? Can
Okay, so
we just
I
seize
just
that
want to
point?
say something really quick before my internet shits itself again. I think, a really big thing is that it doesn't matter what you sympathize, where people lie, what people align with, whatever. The problem is that we have a huge amount of population that are like dissatisfied and they're like feeling disconnected. They're disaffected, and clearly they're in like some state of mind that they're either participating on, even in like small percentages, in things like the Soldiers of Odin and other like fringe groups. So clearly this is something that we need to address and like deal with. And with regards to like what Josie said, there's a main thing that can happen in terms of like policing, right? So if the Ottawa police are not doing their job, then Ontario, the OPP can step in and do their thing, and the RCMP can step in and do their thing. There wasn't necessarily a reason for Trudeau to enact the Emergency Act, which is not real. It's more of like a posturing thing, right? And it's also really just trying to harken back to his dad. He's trying to like role play being his dad. There's a huge amount of stuff when you look at the literature of RCMP and OPP in terms of what they could actually do to either disperse the crowds, to like interact with them. The Amnesty International has like a guideline on how you interact with protests as police. We have examples of in the U.S. where they're like armed black nationalist groups that don't get the same treatment as this gets. Like we want to be synonymous in our responses to these kind of things. We want unity in our responses and how we treat these kind of situations and these people.
Well, can I read off the truckers' demands? I have them. That's not a long list. They want to repeal all vaccine mandates. They want to get rid of vaccine passports and contact tracing programs. And they want government officials to resign if they're not willing to do that. You guys just had a huge federal election in September of last year, reaffirming people's support of these mandates. These mandates are very popular in Canada. I'm sorry, but a very vocal minority is not going to dictate to the majority of people what's going to happen in their country. I don't care.
It doesn't matter if we don't need a vocal minority to dictate what's going to happen. We will still listen to the vocal minority. We're still not going to just
we listen to
jail
them.
And
We
oppress.
heard them.
Yeah.
Listen to them. We don't let
They've
them
been
camp
there a
out
long
in our
time.
capital.
Yeah,
that's where the police.
Everybody is a minority of one. This talk of minorities being unimportant to political decisions is absolutely absurd on both a moral level and a statistical level. All of us are a minority of one. And even if you have a bunch of people who may not represent the quote-unquote general consensus of a political situation, it does not mean they are wrong. It's an absolute total straw man, which says nothing about the veracity of their claims. So I don't want to hear this talk about minority anymore. I want to hear this talk about merit. Let's talk about merit. Do these protesters have any moral merit to their claims? As that person, I forgot to know his name, so I will learn his name later, just mentioned, they want to get rid of vaccine passports, and they want to reinstate people who have been fired due to not going ahead with COVID guidelines, back into their jobs, and they want to, and they want to do that stuff like that. They want to basically remove the coercion the government has sicked upon the private marketplace and upon society to further its arbitrary goals. That is not unreasonable. That is quite just. So my question for anyone who says this is not reasonable, on what basis are the demands of the Canadian truckers not reasonable? I'll wait.
On the basis of the vast majority of people not wanting their demands implemented. That's
Just because a majority system does not make it right. Majorities are wrong all the time. History has shown that majorities have gotten things morally wrong all the time. I can give you a list of examples. Majorities have been in favor of a lot of things that have been morally wrong throughout history. So that makes no sense. So on what
are you
basis?
saying vaccine mandates are morally wrong?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
sure.
well, there you go. We fundamentally disagree then, because public safety is the
fine.
priority of the
that's fine.
people,
We can
and
most people
want that.
That's fine, but Trudeau is not letting his citizens dissent in a meaningful way. What he is doing is he's saying that he's right, the quote unquote science is right, the quote unquote government is right, and everyone else needs to just take a back seat and be under his boot. And that is not a reasonable response to I don't care if it's a minority or majority who are rising up in righteous anger. So on what basis are their demands not reasonable?
Because they're trying to be bullies and try to stop the security and trade of an entire city to get their demands met. Like,
wait. Okay, so before Josie finishes, let's let her finish, and then we can have other people say. I just want to hear. I just can't hear what Josie's saying.
Yeah. Thank you. And so the thing is, it's like we've had these debates on the floor in Canada talking about the legitimacy of vaccine mandates. The fact is, these debates are still happening on those floors. It's not like these demands are not being heard all the time. The fact is, like, the reasonable idea that we're going to be checking these demands have been done time and time again and have been denied time and time again.
Well, under the Emergency Powers Act, a debate today in Parliament was just suspended because the area around Parliament was called a secure area. So quite literally, you have a government that is quite literally wrecking itself in terms of its ability to even discuss the very merits of the powers they're using, which I find quite and arbitrary. It's characteristic of a dictatorship.
Your question was not that, though. Your question was the merit in hearing their debate. The issue is we've heard their debate about banning the vaccine mandates and all of this type of stuff. We've done it over and over again. Even in the United States, we've done that. But your question and your statement was that they were not hearing their demands heard on the floor, which they were multiple times, and they were denied it. And they did this protest so they can get their way.
My statement was that that dissent in a meaningful way is being squashed, and just because a bunch of politicians, many of whom are two-faced and have ulterior motives, talk about an issue does not mean the issue is being meaningfully addressed. The people in a free society and a representative government have the moral right to rise up and speak their piece, speak their conscience in a peaceable way, and this protest has been largely peaceable.
In September. I want to correct. I want to put a little bit.
Wait 1 second. I want to let Christian finish because it felt like 2v1 in that interaction. I just want to give him like 15, 20 more seconds. You're done? Okay. Well then I'll let.
No.
Oh no, or
one more thing.
Okay.
This idea that they've already had their say is not how a free society works. Someone should be able to speak for as long as they want, for as long as their heart allows them to speak, and they shouldn't be stopped by arbitrary government rule. Anything less, the alternative would be the government deciding when discourse is acceptable, how long is acceptable, and then by virtue of doing that, controlling what is acceptable. And of course, that would not be correct either.
Discourse is not.
This isn't just about discourse, though. It's heavily impacting the economies, not just in Canada, but other places as well. So,
$300 million a day when they block the bridges. Do you think that's fair to those workers who's trying to make a living?
The Ambassador Bridge was one situation, and it was not in Ottawa. I mean, those are two different situations: the Ambassador Bridge and the protests in downtown Ottawa. And so we can have a conversation about the Ambassador Bridge. Personally, I don't think that's the best way to get your point across by blockading things. But I think that that's somewhat of a sort of that misses the point a little bit. Why are they blockading things is the question, right? And this is the same thing that leftists said in defense of Antifa and BLM when they were blockading highways. The question, why were they doing it, was never really asked. It was fingers were just pointing at them and they were called terrorists, and many of them were terrorists for different reasons. But we have to ask the question, why are they doing that? And they're doing it.
We know why that. We know why they're
doing
it, and we disagree with that, and we've established why we disagree with that, and the majority of Canadians disagree with that. So we've heard their demands. We disagree.
Here's what happened with the bridge, right?
Okay,
hang on a second.
Okay, 1 second. We're gonna have MPU go, then we're going to go in the order of Rice, Taft, and then Rhizome.
Thank you, Dylan. Look, the people's right to be heard through their representatives is one form of expression and redress of grievances, right? The other part is when those people that are representing you aren't doing what you need them to do, you have a right to confront your government. We do in the United States. I presume that they still have the ability to do it in Canada. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay? But when you say that you've had your right to speak on the floor and then that's it, right? That's literally saying the government gave you your shot. We don't agree with you, fuck off. And then we're just going to lay the hammer down on you, and we're going to use whatever massive amount of governmental power that we can to prevent you from having any say at redress whatsoever. Okay? And IRI, with all due respect, man, those people, those truckers, they actually are working class folks. They're the ones that are putting their life on the line, okay, and putting their lives on hold in order to get that word across. Are patriots in the sense that they are trying to make themselves known to their government. People that are out there doing the illegal stuff, and blocking of the bridge, right? The bridge between the U.S. and Canada. No, I don't agree with that. I didn't agree with Black Lives Matter protesters blocking roads and diverting ambulances and stuff last year, right? There's no place for that. You can get your message out. You can do lawful protest. You can coordinate it out so you can do and get things done that you want to get done to get the message across. I think the government still has an ultimate fundamental responsibility to sit down with those people and not just simply say, you're all terrorists, you're all bad, and we're not going to do anything with it. We're just going to send the RCMP and everybody else at you and just beat the living shit out of you. And there have been instances where the police, the RCMP, has beaten the shit out of protesters who were like 70 fucking years old. Okay,
Hey,
so
well,
it's true on both sides. Tensions are high. Yeah. The government has a responsibility really to cool its jets and bring the temperature down so that they can have a meaningful discussion with people. In my opinion.
Well, I think they
I'll let
escalated
Ira
things.
Respond, then we'll go to the list. But Bryce has been replaced by somebody. A separate Canadian.
He's been replaced by me, this Plonker. What's up?
Replaced by him. We have a list of Canadians. We keep them in a refrigeration unit below the studio. Nice. And we appreciate...
That's how we keep our natural temperature.
Yes, I store him next to the vaccine. And we're going to throw it over to IRI before going to the list.
Yeah, look, I think that these protesters escalated things when they brought the kids there, when they started accepting money from foreigners in order to stay there. I mean, half the monies come from the United States and other countries. And so that's why the Emergency Act was enacted, because it allowed the government to freeze those accounts. I mean, can you imagine foreign countries fueling a protest in America? We would be outraged by that. It also allowed the government to
Chinese money
make
funding
it
U.S. elections.
Well, it would also allow the government to make it illegal to bring kids to any blockade, which should be a basic thing that parents already know. But these people are so incompetent that they brought their kids as human shields. So let's talk about why. And also, the Emergencies Act, prevented foreigners from coming across the border, which a bunch of Americans were going to do. So let's be honest about why the Emergency Act was enacted in the first place. And it's because of those clowns and this astroturfed protest. These are not people trying to just express themselves. They had a chance to do that last year in September in the federal elections. The people of Canada handed the government over to Trudeau again and said, we like what you're doing. That's how we do things in a democracy, my friends.
That's how you do things in a dictatorship.
The question is not about whether or not we should, break up illegal blockades. I think we all agree here that if you're like blockading a vital road that is needed for essential economic or health services or whatever, that's bad. And that's something that the police should get involved with. The debate that we're having is about the Emergency Powers Act, right? That's the topic in question. And Trudeau's use of the Emergency Power Act on a protest happening in the government against government policies is clearly not in the spirit of the act. And it's clearly an overreach, especially when it's used in this way to like freeze assets. I think that's an example of governmental bullying, which is, that's not the kind of thing that is, breaking up the blockade when you freeze assets, right? What breaks up the blockade is when you put in police there. And that's, what is appropriate. So, yeah.
Can I ask Taft, are you okay with half the money coming from foreign countries to fuel people sitting there in the middle of Ottawa?
Yes, yeah, and I think it's appropriate.
That's insane.
I think it's appropriate for Canadians to
foreign
donate
countries
to
should not meddle in other countries.
I think it's appropriate for Canadians to donate to Black Lives Matter protests. I think that's an appropriate use of funds, right? And I think that you're painting it as like money that's going to the truckers is like necessarily going to these illegal activities or like violent riots, but that's like absurd. And I think if you can prove that like foreign money is like directly funding crimes, then you like stop that funding.
It is a crime.
No,
You can't
what
prove
they're
that.
sitting
You
in
the
can't
this
prove that.
majority of the
Ottawa.
protests is not
You're
violent.
making
It's
an
illegal.
assertion you cannot back up. You're making an
Ooh, I
assertion
mean-
you cannot
It's
back
like
up,
most other
IRS.
Me?
protests, which is like
How
the
am I making an
majority is
assertion?
peaceful, right?
Yeah.
And
What?
so
But look, I just have to say this, right? We were talking about, oh, it's majority peaceful and all this type of stuff. When
Yes.
More Perfect Union, you said that these truckers are patriots, and then you said, but some of them aren't because they're breaking the law and blockading the roads. Would you say that some of those BLM protesters in the United States were patriots too, for showing their freedom to be able to express and
Yes.
address
Yeah,
regresses in the
no, let me,
government?
some of them are.
I know where you're going with it. And yeah, I think so. Anybody that engages in peaceful protest, okay, has a
BLM
place.
had a lot of peaceful protests.
Yeah, it's
Of
mostly
course they
Most
did.
majority.
No,
It was
they-
majority,
Sure,
right?
sure they did. Sure they did. Right?
Yeah.
Sure they did. But it wasn't. But it was the extreme minority, okay, of people in the BLM protests that caused over $8 billion worth of damage.
And
That
so are the
burned out-
truckers right now.
That burned. Hang on. They're not.
Well, how much damage did they
Okay,
cause?
they,
No,
hold
they're
on,
causing
stop.
causes in trade.
I want to dialogue this
There's a
back with
different kind of
Josie. Okay,
Yeah.
you say I said $8 billion worth of damage for BLM and the protests that went on in the United States in 2020, 2021. You say so. That's what's also happening in Canada. Show me where $8 billion worth of damage has been done by the fringe elements in this protest.
Canada's economy is considerably smaller, and they were blocking off areas to trade with the United States. It was already impacting the United States.
An
That can have
area.
a lot.
An area.
The government has
Okay,
been
okay,
blockading
stop,
the
stop,
economy
stop,
for 2 years.
Taft,
stop.
Did I hear you on that?
Okay.
Stop, everybody. There was 3 or 4 or 5 people talking at the same time, so I didn't hear anything. So if you want to talk right now,
Okay.
could you raise your hand, and I'm just gonna call in whoever's probably talked the least.
Well, I'd like, no offense, I'd like Josie to answer my question.
Okay.
Well, I agree with what
because
Lumi
Lumi jumped
said.
on her.
Okay.
Okay,
Then
I
Lumi.
agree with
And then
Lumi
Ryza.
because Lumi they said with the argument which I was going to say, which is the economic impact, and that causes damages to people's income, their ability to feed their families, to be able to actually do the work that they need to do in their country. That damage is also very real, just like the physical damages of destroying a business. So that those things are very real for people. Those impacts are very real for people. So you're saying that the extreme fringes of this protest, which you agreed to, which are the people blocking the bridges and stopping roads and resources, and what Taft was saying about the medical abilities as well of being able to move resources around, are actual damages and actually breaking the law. So the fact is, like, we have to.
Well, it remains
have
to be seen if they're breaking the law, Josie.
They
I
are
mean, the ones that are
breaking
clearly
the
breaking,
road.
the ones that are clearly breaking the law, yeah. But you're trying
But
to draw a parallel and say that they're all
I also say the
breaking.
Black Lives Matter people who are burning buildings and breaking the law were also in the wrong too.
Okay.
What
So
about the
why
people
don't
that
we
firebombed the
appropriate
courthouse
to,
in
like,
Portland?
enact like an
Wait,
emergency act
what?
to freeze their assets,
Okay,
right?
let's wait for
You
a
wouldn't
second.
say that.
So Taft, I agree with you
Lumi,
on the
yes.
freezing assets. I don't.
I agree
Oh,
too.
sorry, Dylan.
Oh, I was giving it to you, Lumi.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Taft, I agree with you on the freezing assets. I think that's a dangerous precedent to set for protests 100%. Now, I think where we'll probably disagree is I'm okay with the more overt response. If the police are not responding and they are blocking bridges, I think it's important that we do get the military out there, give a warning, say, hey, you're blocking vital infrastructure. We need you to clear out. And I think giving that fair warning, hey, if you don't do this, we're going to come through and arrest because we need this vital infrastructure for trade, and then move forward with the people who didn't move. That's where I'm at. I agree that the covert response is not fair. It's without due process. It's an overreach, but
Can I respond to this real quick?
Sure. Yeah.
please.
Yeah, so I think the question is really about what is appropriate response. And the Canadian government has the ability to call in on the RCMP in order to like use police force if the local police are not assisting them, right? And they have that ability without the Emergency Powers Act. So the question that we're debating specifically is like the Emergency Powers Act specifically, is that an overreach? And yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
My understanding was that there was more providence power, that the federal government could not do that without the Emergencies Act, which is why I support it. My understanding was I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with Canadian terms, but basically the governor of the province would require they would have to call in and ask for help for that to be acceptable, which is why I would support the Emergency Powers Act. But I could be wrong in that case, and if so, then
just out of curiosity,
I believe that's correct, but we can.
If the governor of Canada, correct me, tell me what it is, because I don't know all the provinces, but if the provincial governor was in alignment with what the truckers were doing in terms of saying, yes, you have a right to protest, we need to hear you, and then that goes against the federal government says, screw off, I want to employ the powers, they would then circumvent the power, because I think it is, as Taft was saying, correct me if I'm wrong, Canada down there, what is it, Splonker? Splonker. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Premiers, by the way.
But if the provincial governor didn't want to do it, the only way they could get this done was to invoke the act.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, and
which meant
Ontario.
that there's a provincial Ontario. Yeah, that means that a provincial government was okay with letting the protesters be heard. And by the way, just so we're clear, the only two times that this kind of federal overreach have occurred is twice, both named Trudeau. Okay?
Right, and I think it's important.
And there are news reports out that say that Justin is just really trying to mimic his father and the Canadian and the Quebec crisis.
I don't like that paternal argument.
One second. Lumi, I'll let you finish quick, but I want to throw it over to Rhizome, who's been waiting. And Christian, don't worry, you're second on the list after Rhizome.
Yeah, I mean, what I have to say is, Lumi, my bad. Were you going first? Sorry, I might have missed what Dylan said.
Yes, I said that.
Oh, my bad.
It's cool. Oh shoot, no, okay. So if that trade is being impacted for the whole country, I would understand why the federal government would want to step in at that case, especially considering I keep thinking from the United States perspective, Canada's economy being much smaller and that going to have a lot more impact on all those different provinces. And it was impacting other truckers and the whatnot. So that, again, while I understand if that province is like, hey, this is fine, but it's still impacting the whole rest of the country. And I think that's something to take into consideration.
Rhizome?
Is there an example of a blockade that for the extent of this protest has not been able to be stopped by the police? Because my understanding is that the major blockades that we've talked about are things that were short-lived and were broken up by police.
No, absolutely.
Well, the police were very slow to it because, in this article here, the police in Ottawa are actually dealing with a class action lawsuit that's getting built against them because of the unequal treatment of how they've treated protesters dealing with minority issues. I'm gonna say minority issues, and dealing with race issues. The police came down really hard on those people and dispersed it, but they've let this continue to go on, just unabated for so long. And that's why this whole issue is becoming a problem, is because the local police powers weren't doing their job because they had deference and want to take care of those protesters rather than just other protesters that they didn't care about what they were doing for. So that's one of the biggest issues.
Is this a protest and now being morphed into systemic racism?
No,
am I hearing you?
I'm talking about the fact that the police were being very very strong on protests and dealing with race and breaking up those protesters when these protesters weren't really given the same type of treatment of breaking them up. It's very clear. Prior events, right? That's what I'm saying. And it it happens in the United States
so that would be
as well
systemic
in a lot of
racism.
ways. Yeah, I'm sure there's some of that there. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Because I've not heard anybody make that claim, but
Well, I'm just saying that there's a class action lawsuit by the people of Ottawa suing the police departments because of that. I'm citing something that
Is it
exists.
explicitly related to this, or they're
Yes.
saying past treatment and now you're not doing the same thing now, so now we're going to sue?
Well, yeah, they're talking about unequal policing in
Okay.
that particular sense. So
And
that is a problem,
the
I think.
contention is that that's a justification for this Emergency Powers Act?
Well, the police aren't doing their job.
No,
It's
I
when
That's
you
just
have
I
police
get
on
through,
a
but
like January 6th is a very good example of the police
Yeah.
way, way, way underestimating a particular demographic's ability to do damage. I think that's what Josie's trying to getting at here.
let us not bring
Now,
in January
that's
6th, because there's a lot more to that thing that can be reasonably gotten to in this debate tonight.
I hear you,
Fine.
but what I'm trying to get at is that there is we are looking at historically people of different races getting responded to differently, and there being an overreaction in that case and an underreaction, a lack of preparedness. And so it's just like, okay, well, why aren't you engaging with these
Yeah.
people? Is it because you see them, you relate to them more and you're less likely to respond, you're giving hugs, you're engaging in a positive manner rather than doing your job? And that, I think, is a problem. If we can't rely on the police to do something about this protest, that's when you have to get people in from the military.
Yeah, I want to throw it over to Rhizome, and I have Rhizome Christian. I have Spelunker on the list because Spelunker hasn't said anything yet, and he's a Canadian, and I feel like I have to make him talk. So Rhizome, I'm gonna throw it
Make
over
me
to you.
talk.
Okay, yeah. So I've been
Wanna
kind of
hear him
quiet
do
on
his
this
intro.
one because I've been waiting to hear a justification, but it feels like we're just talking about whether or not the protesters have coherent demands, or whether or not they're reasonable people or not. And I think that sure, the demands aren't reasonable and they're probably not doable. They're not popular. But as Lumi just said, freezing people's assets is not the way to deal with that. And that's not a good precedent to set when there's a population of people who just aren't thinking in the correct way or in the way that's aligned with others, to just punish them by freezing their assets to make the necessary action happen. And a lot of us are doing legwork that the Canadian government isn't even doing. We're trying to make justifications that Trudeau couldn't even substantiate. All he said was, this is the only law we have, which, okay, that doesn't mean it's justifiable. And the idea that this is what good leadership would do. Okay, neither of those are justifications. Just because something's the most pragmatic solution doesn't mean that what it incurs is not immoral, right? So if there were justifiable reasons, I'd love to hear it. But yeah, I don't feel like we have gotten to it yet.
I mean,
You
more
didn't
than
think of
that,
my?
this act
I gave
allows for
some.
a lot more overreach than Trudeau has thus far used. So the extent to which Trudeau has used this act, he could use it much more. It's totally crack down on both free movement and freedom of assembly. Now, I think it's good that he's showing restraint and not doing that. But I think the precedent that you can, and it's legitimate to use this act, in cases of protest, I think is, again, a dangerous precedent, because this act, in addition to allowing freezing of assets, also allows a lot more.
So what is let me throw something generally out for people just to kind of answer on or meme off
We're gonna
of.
slide over to Christian eventually.
Okay. This will be super quick, and people can just work it into their answers. But what happens, right, if the imposition of this near martial law state, okay, doesn't have the desired effect? What happens if, in fact, more people say, the people that were on the fence and said, yeah, I think that's too much. What happens if they start thinking that this is way too much, the government's response is too much, and they decide to get more active, involved, from being passive to being more actively vocal against what's going on? What does it take at that point for the government to realize that, yeah, well, maybe we thought we were right, but maybe we should just pull back, we should stop? Or do we just keep doubling down? What do you think the logical outcome is if more people begin to side with the protesters?
And opinion is shifting, by the way. If you track opinion over time, more people are sympathetic now than they were 3 months
That's
ago.
interesting, because I was just looking at an article that says the opposite. But what I was
Really?
going to get at is one of the reasons I want that more overt government response rather than the covert one where we're just freezing assets and it's a lot quieter. But with this, we get the video, we get the responses, the more overt things. And to me, I feel confident with that because if you're right and public opinion is shifting, more people would get out. It's going to piss people off. They will get out and we will see that is more of the people. We will get that video footage. And I think that's important. I think that's important. I think that people, if they are pissed off about it and they are sincere about that, get out and be pissed off. But I'm like, I don't think we're gonna see that. We might see a little uprising of that, but we'll see. I'm not a future, like I can't read the future.
Christian?
Well, yes. So I want to make just 3 quick points. Number one, it is absurd. The idea that the Ontario government or the Ontario or Ottawa rather police were in favor of the protest is absolutely absurd. The Premier of Ontario, the quote unquote governor of Ontario, Doug Ford, has been excoriated by his own caucus because of how anti-protest he has been. In fact, people have been calling him a non-conservative, and he has been from day one trying to shut down what is happening in Ottawa. And he even tried to have tow truck companies tow away the trucks, but most of the companies just said, no, we will not do it. So what did Trudeau do? Trudeau usurped the proper processes of ensuring that could happen, instilled emergency powers, and one of those emergency powers is to compel tow truck companies to kowtow to his will. And there are still some that are not doing it, but most of them want to keep their livelihood. So there's a lot of conversation about, livelihoods and people being affected, but literally forcing a company to do something they don't want to do is nothing more than a more. That's point one. Point two. The entire idea of emergency powers is absurd on a conceptual level. If a judge was the judge in his own case, if he was a plaintiff and the judge at the same time, most of us would say that's absurd. How can you be an impartial judge but also have a stake in the case? That's precisely what emergency powers are. Emergency powers are decided by the government. They are implemented by. Oh crap. Okay.
No, I was talking to Taft. Taft wasn't seen.
Okay.
Snapping and pointing.
Okay.
Can I see you?
Yeah.
There you go. Sorry.
So emergency powers are decided by the government, they're implemented by the government, and they're defined by the government. How in the world can the government be an impartial decider of a matter in which they have a stake in? Trudeau's government obviously has a stake in shutting down these protests because Trudeau, from day one, has been trying to paint all the protesters as Nazis and Confederate sympathizers. So, obviously, he's going to invoke emergency powers to get rid of what he views as a political nuisance. If emergency powers cannot be executed fairly, they have no place in representative government. And number three, there have been several times on this panel where people are trying to make it seem as if the Ambassador Bridge is the same thing as the Ottawa protest. It is not. The Ambassador Bridge was an offshoot of the same kind of resentment. I do not support it. It was not correct. But people are pointing too much at what was happening and not enough at why it was happening, and they're ignoring the entire point. What was happening in Ottawa is nowhere near the level what was happening on the Ambassador Bridge. So let's stop trying to draw a false equivalence between the two.
Okay, so I see Taft, but I'm going to throw it over to Spelunker because he hasn't said anything yet, and then we'll probably throw it over towards Taft in a bit.
Well, I'm ill prepared because I was having some drinks, having some talks with some friends, and I was invited. Someone was having some technical difficulties, but I am from Ontario.
In the freezer?
I'm against.
What was that? In the cooling unit that we keep downstairs.
What are you talking about? The cooling unit?
Yeah, we keep you guys in all Canadians in a cooling unit.
Oh, the Canadians. Oh, I see. There's a joke around. Yeah, but yes, I'm in the cooling unit, drinking and talking about, and some people were having some technical difficulties. I am for the truckers, and I guess I will start by my stance on like why is the thing happening, right? Is because I guess some people have a stance on authoritarianism and choice, and I'm just here to say that in my ideal world, every employer would have their choice when it comes to the vaccine requirements. So if you run a business and you want your employers to be vaccinated, I'm fine with that. I'm just against the government imposing that on the government, the businesses themselves. And I think that's where there's a frustration. There seems to be a lack of communication. There's just I'm someone who was working for the government. and from home. Yay! I was working from home, but I was laid off because they wanted me to get vaccinated, and I said, me personally, my stance is I will not get vaccinated if it is a mandated. I'm not against vaccines. I'm not anti-vax, but if you mandate it to me, I feel uncomfortable. And right now, I'm a healthy guy. I'm within the demographics, and healthy. And I've had COVID, so I just don't want to get vaccinated, especially because it's required. And so I was told, get vaccinated or you lose your job. So I've lost my
Why
job.
didn't you get it when it was unrequired? When it was not required?
Yeah,
That's
Because
his business.
because
That's his
I don't.
choice.
I'm
It's my
asking,
choice.
and if he wants to tell me, he can.
Because it is my choice, and I'm the type of person that it doesn't matter about a vaccine, product, a video game. Hey guys, people pre-order video games, guys. I don't. I let you guys play it and see how shitty it is, and then I play it, or I don't buy it because I see the reviews.
true.
This game, hey,
Yes.
fucking
Yes.
Cyberpunk was
Tell 'em.
really shitty, wasn't it? Right? I didn't buy it.
that game.
It sucks. It has a bunch of bugs.
Yeah, prove him right.
Yes!
Prove him wrong by getting COVID. Exactly.
So you're
No,
a
but
rebel,
I've had
edgy
COVID.
boy.
But my dad, who's vaccinated, triple vaccinated, had the flu shot.
Triple. Why
He
not
felt
quadruple?
worse than I did.
quintuple?
He
What
was
the
like,
fuck?
"What the fuck is this?
He's
I
only had
wish I
3
was
shots?
unvaccinated." He said. But listen. I look at my vaccinated friends and I go, "Good for you. You got vaccinated."
Quick question.
I actually want. If you want to get vaccinated, I encourage you to do it. I encourage most people to do it.
When you had COVID, did you go outside?
No,
Chris Cuomo did.
Nice.
I wear my mask.
Mhm.
And that's another thing, right? And especially if it wasn't enforced by the government,
let's
especially.
Let's keep it semi on topic.
Oh, it is because this is what I think the trucker protest is all about.
Uh-huh.
The
Yeah,
trucker
but the question is
protest
about the morality of the
This
Emergencies
guy's
Act.
Canadian, Dylan. I think he
I
knows
know,
the
but I
topic
mean, the
very well,
Emergencies
okay?
That's a good
Act is
point.
a response to the truckers. I'm a
Yeah.
Canadian guy, and
Are you
I was
American
just
explaining to him?
Apparently,
We're
I'm
American.
sorry.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward, right? Let's fast forward. All this
Mansplaining.
shit's happening, and we're frustrated. It's this trucker thing. It's been 2 years, right? It's not one thing that made it happen. It's the last straw that made this trucker thing happen. And I'm against the Nazi flags if they're not feds and whatnot. I mean, there's Nazi flags out there. Fuck
Wait,
them.
Are you okay with
you know,
Nazi flags by feds?
Come on,
I
that's
hate
not-
Nazi
that's
flags.
Not rip the conversation apart.
I know. Well, I need to introduce my stance, right?
Yeah,
I'm trying to fast forward it. I'm trying. I'll make it
understand
quick.
your
I'll make it
stance.
quick.
You've made it not quick. We have to move on to somebody else though.
Well, I must.
Well, I'm new here.
Yeah.
Well, I
Okay,
know-
so the Emergencies Act, I think it's inappropriate. I just think it's inappropriate because you're now defining what assembly is inappropriate and may cause violence. It's just it was very quickly enacted. It didn't there was no that's I guess that's my saying. I would like to let it get because you seem annoyed. I just oppose the Emergencies Act, right? Let's just there you go.
Dylan, I see why you need the remedial program now.
So
I think this is resolvable by simply saying that Trudeau.
What do you mean?
has
Wait,
a
hey,
set of
whoa!
precogs.
I did a great job.
You
I
did.
did a great job.
Yeah,
I
you
just
did a
look
great
at their
job.
faces right now, and this guy stroking his chin. Let's just move it on. I did a great job.
What's wrong with me stroking my chin?
I agree.
I did a great job.
Well,
Keep going.
I
You
must say
I
something.
feel like I got to get my meme back in there. So Trudeau's.
By the
got
way,
3
my
precogs.
podcast
That's
is
how
called
he knows.
Chance of Flurry. Let me just plug myself.
Okay,
in.
we got it.
Yeah.
We
Before
got
he
it.
gets kicked. Before
Fucking
he gets
we
follow
got
the
it.
Chance
I like
of
this
Flurry
guy.
podcast. It's the best Canadian podcast.
Okay, we got it. Please.
I must say
Okay.
something.
So
We'll get it on the outro.
There's a few people who want to say something, but Taft was next, so I want to throw it to Taft.
Yeah, I have a real quick thing to say. Just going back to what Lumi and I were talking about as far as polling. I was looking at an Angus Reid poll. It's like a nonpartisan national poll for Canada. and it's showing a 15-point increase in people wanting restrictions to end, up to 54%. I have no doubt that there's like a variety of polls out there right now that are showing different results, whether that's below or above the 50-point mark. But the reason for bringing this up is to show that this is hardly an issue that's like 80%, people supporting, crushing the protesters and continuing the restrictions. This is something that there's like a serious movement around, trying to make people's voices heard. And again, I think it's scary that you can have so many people, reasonable Canadians, a huge number of the population, who are trying to make their voices heard, and we're taking such extreme measures rather than, going through proper channels to get the kind of police forces that we need. And again, we all agree that getting rid of the blockades, that's good. That's something that should be done with the police. And it's not something that we necessarily need this sweeping act to do. And it's a really dangerous precedent. Christian.
So, I have a challenge for those who support the invocation of the Emergency Powers Act, because I like to think of these things on a conceptual level. How can you conceptually justify emergency powers if these few things are true? Number one, the government is the entity rather, that defines emergency powers. Number two, the government is the entity that decides where they're enacted. Number three, the government is the entity that decides when to stop. In any normal circumstance, if someone was both the judge and jury in their own case, we would call that unfair. How can the government be an impartial actor to the execution of its own powers, especially if we are to accept the presumptions of public choice economics that say that politicians are self-interested, rational actors? So wouldn't Trudeau be interested to wield emergency powers in a way that benefits his case? And since there is no checks and balances, then how in the world can you ensure they're fair? If you care about fairness, then how can you support emergency powers on a philosophical level? How?
Are we ignoring that the government has different sections and isn't like one walking person?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so let's make it more specific. Justin Trudeau is the judge, jury, and executioner in his own case. And obviously, as I just said, he has his own interest, and he has the ability to direct the emergency powers as he pleases without consent of anyone except Parliament after 7 days after invocation. And guess what? His own emergency powers just suspended the session of Parliament today that was debating if they were legitimate or not. So we have quite literally a man using emergency powers to suspend the body that is supposed to decide if they're legitimate or not. So how in the world?
That's crazy.
Yes, that's true. Yes, that's true.
100%.
This is
Why did he
authoritarianism.
suspend it, Christian? Why did he suspend the power? And by the way, they've been debating for 2 days. They've been debating for 2 days already. You started Wednesday night.
But still, yeah. So after 7 days, when Parliament can vote to see if it's legitimate or not, and after a few, he put a secure area in the downtown Ottawa area where Parliament is, and that suspended the session. So quite literally, he wielded his own emergency powers to stop checks and balances that are meant to keep him in check. How on a conceptual level? On a conceptual, I don't care about the reason. I care about the conceptual soundness. How on a conceptual level is this sound or just? How is it fair? How is it fair?
Because laws are passed. You think the Emergencies Act was out of thin air? It was passed in 1988. Obviously, it had a majority.
He believes the law is unjust.
Yes.
That's his problem.
Okay.
When a majority of people agree to pass a law, that's how democracy works, my friend.
This is making a moral, not a legal argument.
There are so many. There are so
for the
many ways
legal
that you could
argument.
punch that
do
argument
you
right
mean?
through the middle, IRI.
It's the problem of
guys,
anyone who
if
has a
you don't
moral
like a law-
conscience.
Let me tell you guys how democracy works. You don't like a law. You work to get people to see things the
Okay.
way you do. You
Democracy
get people
is
elected.
two wolves
to
and a sheep
change the
voting
laws.
on what
Government
each
should
agenda
you
is.
in your dissent.
You're
Okay.
agenda.
I can't. Okay.
Just
Stop.
a
Stop. Everybody, stop.
Yo.
Okay.
I have to respond.
Diarized
All
camera.
this talk about-
Wait.
I have to respond.
Wait. Okay. So the problem is,
After-
I'm hearing. I understand that, Christian. I'm hearing multiple people talk at the same time. And when I hear like 4 people yelling at the same time saying things, right? You don't get 4 times the information. You actually get none of the information when 4 people talk at the same time. So I'm going to want IRI to restate his position because I didn't even get to really hear it. And then we'll have
I'm just
Christian
saying
respond.
that obviously the Emergencies Act passed in 1988, so it had a majority of the people. That's how you pass a law. If you have a problem with the law, then you get people elected to change it. So listen, you're ignoring all the reasons why the Emergencies Act was invoked this time. Also, it has an expiration date of 30 days, so it's not like it can just go on forever. And it was used for this one day to stop debate for a moment.
May I?
It was stopped for a debate for a moment, so we could clear the area and get those poor children out of harm's way, just sucking up toxic fumes from the trucks. Sitting there with fuel cans that could explode at any moment, and people using these little kids as human shields is so disgusting.
Okay, this sort of moral platitudes, this emotional platitude don't work in logical conversations.
Your whole argument are moral platitudes, and you're criticizing me?
That's true. You're just all moral platitudes.
Your whole argument is moral platitude.
No, a platitude is an empty saying. What I'm doing is I'm looking at foundational morality and making a decision. It's two different things. But I must respond.
You're not king. You're not
king.
No,
I must respond. Yes, you're right. And neither is Trudeau. He's not king either.
He's an elected leader.
Wait. Stop. There's two people talking at once. We're going to let Christian. I said Christian was going to respond. MPU, you're next on the list. And then it's Lumi.
Democracy killed Socrates. Democracy decided to institute Jim Crow. Democracy did a lot of things that are morally unjust. Just because a majority of people invoke something does not mean it is morally just. You must have a foundation, a morally just foundation to an action to see if it's right or wrong. A majority utterance is not enough. So I don't want to hear this talk about majorities or the process. I don't care about the process. The process has been historically wrong and has been only corrected when men of good conscience have invoked good moral thinking to correct the process. This is not about me wanting to be king. This is about me not wanting Trudeau to rule like a king. It's about me wanting him to rule like he's someone who is in representative government, who has a moral duty to respect the sentiments of his citizens, regardless if he agrees with them or not. But he is not doing that. He is calling them Confederates. He's calling them Nazis. He went on the floor of the parliament and said, these guys are Nazis and Confederates. This is not someone who has a care in the world. Let me finish. He's not someone who has a care in the world about morality or justice. He has a care in the world only about his own political musings. So that's the problem here. It's not about me. It's about Trudeau. That's the problem.
Maybe when Nazis show up to your protest, maybe it says something about you and your people that are out there.
Stop. We're going to MPO.
Yeah. So with respect to the Emergency Powers Act being only 7 days IRA, are you aware that the deputy prime? 30 days. Are you aware that Chrystia Freeland, who's the deputy prime minister, plans to make the Emergency Powers Act permanent?
How can she do that if the law does only forces it to expire in 30 days?
Because the government can propose the legislation before Parliament. The intent that they want to do that.
Okay, so legislation before Parliament. It's not the law right now.
It ought to put a chill and a cause for pause down the spine of every free-thinking person. When the government is willing to debate kind of power that Trudeau is exacting now and what he can still do underneath Canada's Act, that should scare the living hell out of every citizen.
Every law in the books can scare the hell out of it.
I'm reminded of how Governor Murphy of New Jersey, when asked about the constitutionality of his COVID mandates back in April of 2020, he said, "I didn't consult the Bill of Rights before I did this." It's an immoral thing. It is an immoral thing, and they're contemplating instantiating an immoral thing in permanence.
Can you imagine the anarchy?
Are reasonable, by the way.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine the anarchy that would happen if we appealed to every single person's morals and their idea of morality? I mean, we have to have majority rule and agree on one thing. We cannot talk to every single. What's your morals?
But that's the thing, right? You have to have restrictions. You have to have restrictions because otherwise, democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting on what to eat for dinner. We all know this. Right?
I'm really important. I have a question for you.
It's important.
We've got a million.
Yes.
Wait. Okay. So we're gonna have Christian go, but then we have to have Lumi go because Lumi's been waiting.
Okay. I'm really important. I got a question for you. What confers morality upon a law? majoritarian rule or the contents of the law itself. So, for example, if majority rule passes a law that says you can kill a newborn infant on every third Sunday of a month, is that law just because majority rule said it, or is it unjust because it's literally advocating the taking of it? And it's not just at all. There's no process.
Your example is so ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's not even a fair example. Give me a break.
It's not the example. It's not about the example. It's about the principle. If majority
but this is what you guys do.
No,
this is what you and MPU do.
Let me finish. No. This is what you do is you assume that process dictates morality, and that's fundamentally false, my friend. Process does not dictate morality. The contents of an action dictate its morality. And until you can recognize that, you're not going to be able to have any kind of just government or any kind of just policy proposal at all.
I'll give you a real world example. Slavery was legal. It was immoral.
No, we're not. We got to go to Lumi because if Ira's responding to that, then we got to go to Lumi.
Well, I just think what these guys do is they find the most extreme how can I say, the most extreme way to implement the law. Like, can you imagine it could be used in this crazy way? You guys refuse to look at how it's being used. You fixate on the worst ways it can be used, and then you say this law is garbage because of that. But you refuse. You refuse. It's not about precedent. It's about how the law is being used, because I can come up with all sorts of fantastical ideas of how every law in the books can be abused, but it's about how the laws are being abused. And if you look at how the Emergencies Act is being used, it's perfectly justifiable. You guys are creating a fantasy where, the next government's going to come along and shut down everything and take away all your money. And if you donate $5 to a campaign, they're going to lock your little $400 personal checking account
that you disagree with comes into power with that precedent.
Stop. We're throwing it to Lumi. Lumi has waited for a while now.
Them freezing the assets because they're disrupting
labor? Have you seen who they... Yes, but it's who they froze the assets of, Lumi. Who they froze.
My understanding wasn't that they're like, oh, well, it's far right people or anything like that. It was, my understanding is it's disrupting the economy, and that would be a labor movement as well. If a labor movement stood up and said, we need better pay, and they fought back against that. And like, again, I hear you in the perspective of well, we want to have some sort of response, but I think having that more overt response is a lot better to respond to. Then labor can be out there fighting back against it if it is a common thing, and the people can see what's happening more easily than if we covertly do that. That's my understanding, but...
So it's better to get punched in the face directly than getting stabbed in the back is what you're basically saying. And that's both of them lead to undesirable outcomes.
No,
neither of those is
happening.
You're
for enacting emergency powers is the disruption of the economy and the incoming of foreign money funding these protests. But we can imagine a lot of protests that you would probably find legitimate, which might also disrupt the economy. For example, protests around racial rights. A lot of the people here are progressive lefty people. And I think you would argue that or you'd be able to acknowledge that if you have a large scale protest that is for racial rights, but it results in many roads not being usable for a short time, that's going to disrupt the economy. It's probably also going to receive funds from sympathetic donors abroad. If this is the kind of barrier, the kind of thing that you're willing to enact emergency powers over, you're allowing any future administration to potentially totally restrict rights. And I agree that Justin Trudeau is restricting his own ability. He's not enacting the fullest extent of this law that he could. I think that's good. And okay, credit to him to not restricting freedom of movement or freedom of assembly and promising not to. But the danger is that you could potentially use the same justification to do really horrible things, even worse things that you would agree are bad in the future. So that's why we talk about precedent. That's why we have official channels for breaking up these blockades, which we agree are illegal and bad, and why we think that those official channels should be used rather than this massive overreach by Justin Trudeau.
Someone tell me, what's
wrong with that I normally land on you politically, but the issue for me is this feels like people using what little leverage they have to actually make the government move in their favor. And I can just see people who I would agree with doing that, and then I wouldn't agree with assets being frozen just to stop that from happening, even if it's a minority of people, and even if some of those minority of people are using a tactic or tactics that I don't agree with.
But
Well,
you
let
guys
me ask
realize
this.
whose assets are frozen, right? You guys, there's been very few accounts. There's like 20 names on a list the government gave the banks.
That's a
So
good question. Yeah.
like you guys are
Well,
acting like if you
Okay, hit
donate
us with it.
$5, you're gonna get your account frozen. That's
Do you
not
know
what's
whose
happening.
No, that's
accounts
not
were
what
Fair
we're
enough.
frozen?
Do you know?
saying.
Can you speak to that, IRI? Because I'm not aware. I
I
just know that.
can, yeah.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Organizers and the GoFundMe. These people were, and Taft brought up a point that it was working. They cleared. I think you said this, Taft. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but you said it was working. They cleared the blockade. They were just getting warmed up. They did not have their $10 million. Imagine if they actually had access to that. What they could have done.
IRI, you understand that the GoFundMe and the Give Send Go, both of those were frozen by a court order before emergency powers ever invoked. You realize that, right? So if those were the assets in question, then why in the world we need emergency powers, which gave the government? No, it gave the government. This is what gave the government. No,
because of
let me finish.
crypto. They expanded it to include crypto as well because they were
Couldn't you
getting
get a court
around that.
order? Why couldn't you get a court order? No. What the emergency powers is, it gave the government to freeze any assets they thought or believed were connected to the protest without due process. That's the problem. Again, the government is being the judge and the jury in its own case. Yes.
It was used.
I will
so
send
they
you the
could
BBC
track
article.
funds.
Yes.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying you're providing a different justification for it. You're saying they did it
No,
so they
I'm
don't
not.
have to use due process. They're doing it so they could expand
No.
things like that, the terrorism list, so that it watches funds with banks and stuff like
No,
that,
you
and to
don't- you
get
don't
crypto.
understand. I'm not saying they're doing it because they don't want to allow due
You don't need a
process.
bank
I'm
for crypto.
saying emergency power suspends the necessity of due process. That's what I'm saying. That's not me making a value judgment. That's
Of
me
course
describing
it
what's happening.
does. Of course it
It's
does.
absurd
Hey,
to like
that's not
target the
good.
leadership
That's
in this case, because like the leadership, if you listen to what they're saying, they want it to be a peaceful protest. They're trying their hardest to like organize this in a way that is going to be favorable to the public. But like when you directly target these like people who are trying to actually get the protests under control and organize it properly, and you're freezing their assets. I mean, I think it's like freezing the assets of like the BLM, like the women who run the website, because there's like violence in the streets in some tiny percentage of BLM protests.
Well, wouldn't you
right?
rather
It's
have that than
absurd.
the cops bashing their heads in and tear gassing the crowd?
I'd rather have neither situation.
So
Well, this was a more peaceful solution.
I'd
my
rather
friend.
I'd rather the
It's not
removal
peaceful.
of
It's not
mandates and
peaceful. It
I
lockdowns.
think
has
it's more-
devastating impacts on people's lives.
Okay.
My
They're
issue
sticking-
is
you
it's
said-
I'd
more
rather
you said-
adhering
Okay,
to their demands.
I can't. Okay.
it's more
I can't hear anybody. I'm gonna have Josie go because Josie's been waiting since I can't hear what anybody else is saying. Josie.
Yeah, absolutely. So first I'm going to zoom out, right? Because we need to zoom out on the whole idea of why these things were done. And the aspect is, and I've actually did some research while this was going on. There was actually photographs of like children wearing gas cans on their bodies. And that is extremely terrifying. I do not like that. That makes me very nervous that that situation is actually happening. Secondly, I want to zoom out to the idea of the fact that okay, we have the emergency powers, and we can argue about the way that emergency powers are levied, the way that things are done, but there is an expiration date on this, and also emergency powers requires after it's over that there has to be a lot of hearings and indictments of why this happened and a lot of investigations to try to make the laws better. There is some precedent for some institutional support. Now, going back to the final piece that I want to talk about, because Christian, you were talking a lot about like the government is doing this for its own interest, the government's doing this, and the government's doing this. Well, that's what a government is. A government is supposed to try to protect its own interests. That's what it's supposed to do. So when you have citizens that are in danger, and you have children that are in danger, you have assets that could be lost. All of these things actually exist for the greater to be able to protect the citizenry. That's the way the government actually works. So I think that when you talk about the morality of like the government shouldn't be able to do this, I feel like you're arguing a point in an ideal sense of the way that you want to see the way government is actually supposed to be done, rather than the actual reason these things actually happen is to protect state interest. And
Okay, I have a
that's what we
question.
got to do. And that's the important thing. But yes, you have another question. Let me answer
have a
it directly.
Oh, sure.
Go
Yes, I would love you to. I would love you to. Josie, what danger were those poor kids in before the police began arresting people today and sticking nightsticks down their throat? What danger were they in? Because you have, before this all happened today, you had playpens being erected, you had mess houses, you had floaty, bouncy things in the middle of the street, you had snowball fights. What danger were the kids in before the police began their crackdown? What danger?
The danger is that the children were in a
What danger?
part of a political process rather than
It's
them
not
actually
dangerous.
being safe in their homes.
It's not
Like,
got
it's
some
like,
dangers.
it's very clear.
I could list some. I could list some.
No, wait,
Toxic
wait,
fumes from the trucks.
wait,
Extreme
wait,
cold.
Wait.
Wait.
Okay, Christian asked a question. Now people are trying to
Yeah.
answer the question. What do people need to wait for?
Yes.
FPU?
What, so me? You
Oh,
want me to
I'm
answer?
sorry.
No, I'm asking.
Well,
what-
I
what
had
do
a
you need to wait
response
for?
to Josie.
Okay.
It's 10 seconds.
Okay, but it was
Okay.
but Christian asked a question, and I want to make
Yeah.
sure people.
Oh, I'm
can answer the
sorry.
question.
There was colloquy going on. Okay, never mind. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, more. I'll get
get
to
it
you in
in.
a second. I'll
Okay.
get to you in a second.
Okay, Christian.
So-
IRI wanted to answer the question, or Josie, you can also answer the question.
I'm gonna try this. The whole point is that
Okay.
IRI is telling the truth about the fact that it's cold. There is a lot of machinery going around. They're erecting playpens instead of playpens in warm climates where there's actually daycares and actual support in those areas. Like the idea that we're trying to use children as a reason, and you invoked exactly the reason why the children were there, right? Oh, we weren't doing anything to the children until the police came and did. That's the reason they brought the children, so they could actually have that excuse.
What?
Okay.
Human
Okay.
shields.
Okay.
So I
Human
Okay.
shields.
No, check
have
it out. How many times at BLM protests and stuff like that were we told where kids were getting out of school so that they could go protest and put themselves in dangerous situations? Okay. The other
I
thing
don't
is, Josie,
disagree
the
with
kid
that.
that you're
What?
talking about with the kid that you're talking about that had the gas can on his back was an empty gas can, and they were playing back and forth on something. There was no gas in the can because the article that you probably searched, okay, said the kid was running back and forth. Nobody runs back and forth with a 5-gallon gas can on their back.
Okay, so
wait, one second. I
nothing-
wanted IRI to be able to answer the question too, because he seemed very eager to.
I am. Exhaust fumes from trucks running all day long, the horns honking, blaring, and this is not good for little kids. You think they're wearing ear protection? Being in the cold environment outside. I mean, this is bad parenting 101, man. It's
Wearing
embarrassing.
a
The
mask
kids
all
are
day
being
in
used.
school is good too,
Kids are
right?
being used. Oh yeah, wearing a
Right.
little
Putting this
surgical
CO2.
mask.
Are you
is
talking masks are
really
dangerous?
comparable.
You're
Don't
losing
honk.
your.
Hold
Are
on,
you
hold on.
comparing
Hold
that?
on.
to
CO2.
No, I'm
CO2?
just saying if you're worried
Hold on.
about noxious fumes, putting more carbon dioxide in your blood
It's the CO2.
is a
Dude,
problem.
that's bro
Okay.
science.
If I
Bro
may.
science, man. You are.
So
This is a men's
So-
magazine bro science article on
Men's
display right here
magazine.
below me.
So children being involved in politics and you
where?
disagree, children being involved in politics and you not liking that is not the same thing as their livelihood being in danger. Okay, there are trucks and cars everywhere, in society. Does that mean that they're always in danger? If that's the line of reasoning you have, you ought to apply to other situations. The thing here is, you guys just don't like the political cause that children are involved in, and guess what? That's fine. I personally think that that anyone who's going to get involved in politics should have a good idea of what they're protesting, and they should make a value statement. Children typically can't do that. Fine, I agree, but they're not in danger. Just because they're involved in politics does not mean they're in danger. So my question stands: what material danger were the kids in before Trudeau had his henchmen put nightsticks into the throats of protesters?
Okay, first off, the danger is the fact that they put them in a space when that was possibly going to happen. They are putting
so
children
it's subjective.
in a
It's a
position.
possibility.
But no. They're doing it because they want to use these children as an excuse, just like you are doing right now, Christian.
No,
You
but
are
who brought
literally
the
doing that.
guns? Who brought? I mean, like
What
that's
am I doing?
the initial thing, right? I mean, who brought the guns?
You-
What about
am I
those
doing?
people camping who put a knife to the throat of Parliament by standing out there in the middle of the street for 3 weeks?
Okay, that's called dissension, and that happens in representative government.
But-
not in
but
free
Chris,
society.
I
Get
can
used
Yeah,
to
go
it.
ahead, Libby.
Hey, as a fellow protester, because I do think protests are very important.
Same.
When the BLM protests were hitting, when it got late, I was very mindful. Are there young people around? Do we need to go back? I think it's fair to say that at certain times when it gets particularly heated, maybe we do want to protect our more vulnerable.
Yeah, we
Is
do.
that fair?
Yeah,
That's
100%.
totally fair.
Christian,
Well,
can you
hold
tell
on.
me where the police abuse
wait.
happened? Because I'm really curious about where this throat comment
There have been
is. Because
there
you're
have been
making it
several
very.
instances
You've
where
been
there have been
very
several
vocal.
I also want to
about
see
that.
some videos where children are also used
I
as
can-
shields against like
Right.
whatever
I'm
it
just
is,
saying, like, I
human
haven't heard any heads being
batons
cracked
and
open.
Okay.
guns.
Talking
after
over each
our
other.
conversation, After our conversation, I can send you the exact videos, but there are clips of people being dragged through the snow as they're being arrested, people being pushed up on and pushed down, nightsticks being used to restrain people. Some of them were quote unquote resisting or whatever, but others were not. So there have been instances of clear police overreach that are not okay. And so,
when
but guess
police
what?
says disperse, so
100%.
when the police say disperse, it's not you're okay to just say fuck that.
You must have lost your mind during the BLM protests watching that, Christian. You must have just lost your mind for weeks.
No. I don't think what the police say is inherently just because they're the police. That'd be an argument from association that's not wise. I think the police are saying something just if it is actually just. So if you're burning down a building and the police say stop doing that, you don't stop doing that, you deserve force. If you're peacefully standing in a street and the police say stop doing that, fuck the police. I don't care. Excuse my language. I don't care.
You guys got principles right here. This guy's got principles.
No, Christian, you are not. That is not true because the police have to.
It is true.
Laws, and the reason that they chose this particular protest is because they knew they were breaking the law. So the fact of the matter.
I mean, the law is injustice. Again, we've talked about.
Do you think it's? Do you guys think it's okay that the Ottawa police had snipers on top of buildings, is associated with this? Do you think there was a call for that? Do you think
Those
there was
guys
any
had
danger out
binoculars.
there that
What do you
warranted
mean?
snipers?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Those
they did
guys
find
with
guns and
binoculars
I
watching
think
what's
the
going on.
guns-
Like,
There were.
No, there
Do
were
we
guys-
know if
there were
that's
snipers.
true? I haven't even
Now,
seen
if we
snipers.
had
Hold on,
someone
the
unnecessarily
police deployed
sniped, I'd
snipers.
lose my shit
Yeah.
over that.
Have we
Like,
seen photos of
absolutely.
snipers? I
That's
haven't
Yeah,
seen
but
them.
that's what they're
terrifying.
doing, and they're doing it under the guise of this police power, right?
They've sniped people. They've killed people.
They've killed
with
people?
snipers.
No, I
Yeah.
didn't say that they deployed snipers. I didn't say
No.
they killed anybody.
Deployed them.
There's no
Yeah,
evidence.
because they were
Oh,
deploying them
okay.
to a protest
So-
where people had guns and bulletproof vests. Like, I think that's a
Yeah.
pretty fine decision.
Right?
Okay,
If
so you
someone
guys are
is-
okay with targeting civilians?
When they have weapons?
When they have assault rifles, yes.
Yeah.
BLM's
Yes.
protesters were civilians too. Do you not agree?
This is a bunch of this happened over here. We're talking about what's happening in Canada, not about BLM. So let's talk about the issue
Yeah.
at
We're literally
present here.
talking about Ottawa.
Well,
I don't,
most
know, I just don't know how you survived,
most-
Christian, after watching the BLM
Oh, I
protest.
survived.
If you were outraged by what you saw
Survived.
today, you must have lost your mind watching BLM. You must have just gone mad for weeks.
Okay, dude, why are you trying to change the topic, man? You're
No,
not
it's
trying
not
to
changing the
actually
topic.
engage
He's
with
trying to keep you
Yes.
morally consistent. He's trying
And
because
I
you're
am
talking
being
about
morally
morals.
consistent.
You're the
You're the
moral.
one who talks
being
about
morally
morals
consistent.
and stuff.
Okay,
Okay,
so
we're not
wait,
talking about
okay, one second. I'm
Hold on.
I'm gonna cut through this, and I'm just gonna pose it because I see what's happening. But so I'll just ask it for them. Christian, during the BLM protests, and when there were certain instances that some people would classify as police brutality with horses or batons or with certain acts of physical violence, did you show the same level of opposition publicly?
Yeah, well, I didn't always have a platform, but I didn't always approve of it, of course not. So it depends on the situation. There were a bunch of BLM protesters in Washington, D.C., who were peacefully protesting, standing there, and the cops were spraying them with OC and tear gas. That's disgusting, that's unjust. Now, there were BLM protesters in Kenosha who caused $60 million of damage, burnt down the entire city, destroyed long-standing
entire city?
businesses. Well,
entire city?
Well, not the
Jump
entire
in.
city, but burnt down a lot of the city.
We know
Well,
who he's
Judge,
talking about. We know who he's talking
Let me
about.
finish. Let me finish. Caused $60 million in damage. And then you had Minneapolis. And then before that, you had in Ferguson, Missouri, where the city was lit up too. Then you had in Baltimore a few years ago when the city was lit up over Freddie Gray. So when
In
violence
LA,
happens,
going
when
Chicago.
when violence happens, when injustice like that happens, that's not okay. And I do support law enforcement efforts to break that up. When people are peacefully protesting and they're being attacked by the cops, that is immoral in every situation, and that is not okay.
There you go.
Okay, I'm gonna throw it over to Taft, and then we're probably gonna look at wrapping up this topic and moving on to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to try to clarify what I think Christian is saying. And that's that when you have a law which he believes is unjust, then you're justified in protesting it, and it would be unjust for police to crack down on protests against an unjust law. And he would say that, like, if you are protesting a just law and you are burning things, he would argue that then cracking down on that kind of protest is appropriate by the police. So I think that, I don't know if that's correct, but that's what I'm interpreting you saying.
Exactly correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's also important to know, right, that it isn't just protesters who are being cracked down on. I mean, the police is actually they arrested somebody who was actually doing a live stream event, presumably not causing any kind of damage. They arrested him while he was on live stream.
Right.
Why?
The Ottawa police actually put out a tweet. The Ottawa police actually put out a tweet saying, if you are a journalist and you're in our arbitrary secure area and you don't get out, we're going to arrest you.
Did they say arbitrary?
Why? Well, no, it's arbitrary in my opinion.
Well, then that's your opinion.
But they have a secure area around, quote unquote, secure area where I guess
is it quote unquote or is it actually a secure area?
It's a secure area. You can look it up. They declared a secure area today, and in these secure areas, the police basically have free reign to do whatever they want to you.
Yeah, it's called disperse orders.
That's not right.
They exist. They've always been there.
Guess what? If the disperse orders are unjust, they do not need to be followed, and there's no reason to be arresting and throwing reporters who are not a party to anything. They're just filming.
I don't know First Amendment rights for. I don't know if Canada has the same type of law.
I don't care if Canada has a First Amendment or not. Morality is universal. It applies everywhere.
Oh, wait. Christian, how are you
whether it's morally reprehensible or not?
How are you so confident that you're right? Like, you're the one who's morally correct here, that it's okay to disobey. Like, how are you so convinced of this? What gives you the right to make that call?
I'm proving my case through argumentation, and I'm proving my case through
your
argumentation.
Argument it's not morally incorrect. Like, that's not an argument. That's your feelings.
No,
that's your feelings.
Incorrect. Look, dude, it's not my feelings.
Are your feelings,
dude. There are ways to objectively identify.
I'm from LA.
There are ways.
I like when you call me
dude. Can I speak? Can I speak? There are ways to objectively identify and reach moral conclusions. Now, I subscribe to a system called natural law theory. I happen to believe that you can find out what is right and wrong by observing the principles of life. Now, this is a much more complex
so I guess rape is okay
conversation.
Then?
No, rape's not okay.
Let him finish.
Well, it happens in nature, so...
Jeez, Rizzo.
Okay, wait, stop. Okay, wait, stop for a second.
Wow.
Just...
Wow.
Okay, stop for a second. We're gonna let Chris...
That happens in nature.
Stop.
Yo, I was invited to this weird shit.
Stop.
Animals
stop.
I don't know what
okay. I'm gonna start muting people. No, we're gonna let Christian talk uninterrupted, okay? And then Rizzo, I'm gonna throw it to you because you said it, so now it's your job, okay? So, Christian, your job. Talk, you go.
So this does not translate to that which is natural is that which is correct. Obviously, that's not true. A natural law theorist would say that getting a prosthetic limb to make sure you have motion in your legs if you've lost a leg is fine, even though that's unnatural. It's about the principles of life. What offends the internal constitution of man? So, for example, what's going to hurt my ability to live and live justly is if you take my stuff, because my stuff is my property is tied to my essence, my being, because property ownership is not just about material things. It's also about me being a self-owning individual. And from that principle flows a demand upon you to respect that, a demand upon you to be decorous with me, a demand upon you to adhere to contracts, demand upon you not to steal my stuff and hurt me. So that's where I'm extracting this stuff from. And look, we don't have a lot of time to talk about my moral foundations, but if you want to have a separate conversation about natural law theory, I would be happy to have it with you, because it's the foundation of the moral system of the United States. It was represented by people like John Locke and people before him as well, who I've studied. So that's where I derive my moral foundation from, and it is everything but arbitrary. On the other hand, saying that something is okay because the majority says it is, that is the definition of arbitrary, because majority opinion, just like human desire, changes and shifts with the ages. And it is not something that you need to base your morality or your policy in. That's a recipe for tyranny. Ask Socrates. Ask people who were persecuted in the Red Scare. Ask them. So that's my say on that.
Yeah, it's fine, Dylan. He just basically said the golden rule, but used way more words than he needed to say it. Don't worry, I get it now.
No, because the golden rule is do unto others as you have them do to yourself. What do you hate yourself? Natural law actually requires you to love yourself. The principle of self-love is what flows and creates the principle of community. So no, it's not the golden rule.
Are you supportive of private property and personal property? Does that apply to that?
There's no distinction. I think there's no distinction. There's no distinction.
Oh.
I am supportive of all property rights. No, according to what it means to have property rights, right? Because now there are legal systems that have created this false distinction, which makes no sense. But the correct distinction is going to be rooted in the foundational morality of natural law. It's my personal belief. Now, look, there are a lot of people in philosophy that reject this approach. There are a lot of people, and I can give you some authors. Jeremy Bentham, who is actually quite influential in the formation of the American criminal justice system. How some of our principles. He's a utilitarian. He personally rejects natural law theory. There are plenty of folks who reject natural law theory, people who some respect and I don't respect. But that's a different conversation. The point here is my morals are not quote unquote arbitrary. They're rooted in a very ancient system that goes all the way back to Aristotle. So I don't want to hear this.
That sounds like an arbitrary reasoning to use historical precedent. That's pretty
What
arbitrary.
What about before Aristotle? What about before Aristotle?
No, so
I'm just trying to beam on you right now.
Okay, wait,
I'm not basing my morals off of precedent. I'm telling you the discovery of natural law goes back to Aristotle, but that doesn't make it just though. What makes it just is its actual principles and its merits. You guys are conflating and equivocating like hell here, like Jesus Christ.
That sounds like you're arbitrarily choosing Aristotle to base your entire moral background on.
Are you saying Native Americans were not moral?
Stating historical fact. Well, I'm
saying Native Americans were not moral.
What you're doing is called a straw man. It's called a straw man.
I think we're getting off the main point. Now we're debating Christian's fundamental philosophy, which will make that the topic of the next Hippy Dippy, and make sure he's not here to debate it either.
Sure. Oh Jesus. Okay then.
Okay. Man. So we're gonna do the wrap up.
Have you heard Christian's take on rape, dude?
Stop.
Oh, God. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
Let's wrap up this topic.
Jesus.
We're gonna do outros, and we're gonna start with Christian.
Oh, me? Oh, okay. Well, that's after coming off of that. Okay, so I think I did not hear a justification for emergency powers or an explanation as to how emergency powers are fair. I explained how they're fundamentally unfair because the people who enact emergency powers are the judge and the jury, and no one can be a judge and the jury in their own case and have fairness prevail. That's the first problem. We have not been paying attention to the fact that the Ontario government has been in stark enmity with protesters since the beginning of this sort of thing a few weeks ago, and they've only been unable to act effectively because private individuals who they've wanted to solicit to do so, i.e. tow truck companies, have refused to do so on moral grounds, and now Trudeau is using emergency powers, which again are unfair, to compel them against their conscience. The issue in Canada is not about kids. It's not about whatever other straw man people want to use. The issue is about people being forced to do things against their will, against their conscience, in the name of public safety and public health. And fundamentally, there being no discussion about if those mandates are just, and the discussion being stifled by a government that does not like dissent. So personally, I think that the Canadian truckers are just doing something correct. Our emergency powers are fundamentally illegitimate and unfair, and that if we want to have a discussion about the morality of blocking bridges or having children on protest, that's a separate issue than if the Canadian truckers have a just cause celebre, and in my opinion, they do.
Okay, next I'm going to throw it over to IRI.
Well, I just want to read off the trucker demands one more time to see how reasonable these are. Repeal all vaccine mandates, which are very popular. I think like 90% of Canada is vaccinated. Get rid of vaccine passports and contact tracing programs. Again, nobody has a problem with these, but a small group of people. Government officials resign, including Trudeau. So, there was just an election last year in September where everybody had a chance to voice their opinion, and they overwhelmingly gave it right back to Trudeau. And I want to just also mention again why the Emergencies Act were implemented, because it seems like a few people may have missed that. It was to prevent foreigners from coming to Canada to cause problems. It was to prevent foreign money from influencing the blockade in Ottawa and bridges. And I can't even imagine what these people would have done if they got their hands on that $10 million. Lord knows. And as Christian also mentioned, it implored or forced towing companies to remove these trucks or store them, etc. So I just caution people to avoid looking at the extreme implementation fantasy examples. This could happen next time and you guys won't like it, and focus on how this was used. Do not get acting like the sky is falling. Like this is just being used in order to break up this blockade that went on for 22 days. If you haven't got your problems addressed by then, it's probably not going to happen. So thank you, Justin Trudeau. Thank you to the government of Canada for getting this under control and not giving in to these terrorists who were using their children as human shields in their ridiculous blockade. Bye-bye, Trucker Chaz. Bye-bye.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Josie.
Okay. All right. So here are some of the justifications that were also released by the government too. One, they were not peacefully demonstrating, they were terrorizing the residents and were not letting them sleep for weeks. Their position, number two, the position was not supported by a vast majority. Three, the public health issues, meaning government can force you to take steps to mitigate public health crisis. And four, the local police refused to enforce the law and the residents were desperate to get help. Therefore, the federal government had to step in to stop this occupation. And Christian said from the great words, if you don't believe that, that's just your opinion, man. It's quoted by the dude.
Throw it over to Lumiru.
All right, I'm definitely down to talk about the struggle with overreach in the powers. I disagree with the protest. I think it's absurd, and I do think that the blockades were a problem. I'm glad to see that a lot of people agreed on that. And I think that once you have the blockade, especially if you're not having police response and it's impacting the rest of the area, then that's where I want to see a step up in addressing of that. But I do like that to remain over in a way that the general public can be aware of what's happening, can record what's happening. I don't agree with the police violence. I take that stand all the time. I don't agree with removing people's ability to record what the police are doing. That's a problem. Easy to say that. But I do think things need to stay over when we are going to intervene at something that is disrupting in a significant manner the economy, et cetera, people's ability to sleep, whatever the case may be.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to Rhizome.
Yeah, my big concern and my hesitancy to just like say that this is something that's totally moral and okay is just that I don't want the government to decide when people are leveraging their ability to protest and like disrupt systems, that they just don't want that happening because it represents too much of a threat. I'm obviously in disagreement with what this protest represents, even if we could call it like a protest or like the goals. And the justifications that I heard in Parliament really don't say that it's justified to me when you're just saying that's the only thing we could possibly do to end it right now. I'm willing to entertain some more of the justifications that Josie looked up or that IRI brought in, because I haven't really seen those. So obviously, like, I'm not claiming that I like have a full breadth of awareness on this, but yeah. However, though, if Splunker is who the protests represent, I think I might be okay with Trudeau freezing people's assets. So who knows? Who knows? I'm open-minded.
Were you a racist or something?
Oh, he is.
Racist against long hair?
Racist.
Question mark.
What color
Racist
skin am I,
against
lady?
Canadians.
I'm non-binary, but what?
Okay, we're gonna go on to.
Non-binary. Okay, I apologize. Have I broken any rules? Am I getting kicked out?
No, it's fine.
No,
Banned.
you were correct.
Yeah,
Don't
ban
worry.
him.
Just for
You're
my
right.
part,
You know
though.
what?
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going on to
Do
the
it
next
for
person,
Lumi.
which is Taft.
Right. Yeah, I think we just need to refocus. And the central question that we're debating here is whether or not the Emergency Powers Act is something that is being wielded justly, if this is appropriate. And I think we can agree that illegal blockades should be shut down. I think we can agree that there's economic damage here. But the fundamental disagreement is whether or not using this act is an appropriate response. And I don't think it is. I think that the justifications presented by IRI and others is not good. Economic damage is something that is going to happen in all forms of protest. If you have a labor movement protest and they're refusing to go to jobs, that's a form of economic damage. And you can total up the millions of dollars of lost labor, right? And say, look at this, horrible thing. We need to enact emergency powers. I think that's a really weak argument and is going to lead to tyranny in the future. And, in regards to the majority or minority of the population and their support for these mandates, I cited a poll earlier showing a majority support easing restrictions. There are different polls that are showing different things, But I want to emphasize that freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, these are fundamental rights that don't exist to protect popular speech. Popular speech, by definition, is something that doesn't need that kind of protection. It's something that most people are going to say anyways. And so the ability for people to, gather together and make their voices heard, I think is a really fundamental right. And the overreach that comes with being able to freeze people's assets, or, and again, this is part of the bill, restrict that assembly, I think is really dangerous. Even if, in a particular case, Justin Trudeau is being self-restrictive with his actions. That's all.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to the Spelunker.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for inviting me to the show over here. I just want to point out, first of all, that the opposition is looking at me, and I don't know. Again, I just pointed out maybe racism, but I don't know. But they would like my freezing of my bank account. Oh my God, ladies and gentlemen, we would like the freezing of my bank account. That's amazing. Thank you. All right, thank you. So, and we also have some other guy that says that look, there's not as much. We had someone else mention some other polls. Polls are different. We can have some different polls. But another guy that mentioned that, look, you don't have the support. 90% of people are vaccinated. Sure, but that's assuming that the vaccinated that 100% of the vaccinated don't support the protest going over in Ottawa. And you wouldn't make that claim, right? You wouldn't be so dumb. You wouldn't be that dumb to make that claim, right? I don't think anyone over here in this nice 9-paneled server would make that claim. I think that would be a dumb claim to make. So that's a stupid claim to make. This 90% are vaccinated aren't for this the protest. It's a protest about freedom. It's a protest about choice, really. Not ultimatums. We're not for ultimatums. We're for choice. And we're against racism over here. Again, I'm against. I don't know about this panel with this racism thing about freezing assets, about this. But anyways, all I have to say, I just wanted to point out that there's some real problems with your panel over here, with this freezing of assets of certain individuals, minorities, really. They point out that they are minorities, right? So they want to freeze assets with minorities. And what I hate the most about the state of emergency, or the act, is the prohibiting of taking part in public assemblies where it's considered a breach of peace. We now consider it a breach of peace, or beyond lawful. Again, we've talked about how law is injustice. Oh, now we make justifications as to whether or not certain assemblies are just. Whether we can assemble or not depends whether or not what the reason is. We can protest depending on what the reason is for. I think that's ridiculous. I think that's authoritarianism, and I think my time is up. Thank you.
Okay, MPO.
Yeah. So the question whether or not the government can vote itself the kind of power that is contained within the Emergency Powers Act, and their methodology for implementing it, their tactics for creating or pretexting circumstances that can suspend the debate around how long it should exist, desire of members of the cabinet, or not the cabinet, but the government, to actually instantiate this kind of authority, this kind of totalitarian authority, okay, on a permanent basis, not just a 30-day debate it and come back around with something, combined with the fact that I've seen on Twitter today, there's a guy that was protesting, didn't look like he was doing too much. He might have been resisting arrest, didn't look like he was armed, but he's surrounded by RCMP officers. And then you see in the video that this guy gets his head caved in with the butt of an assault rifle. Okay. We see people, there's news reports that police horses were trampling protesters. They're talking about police are pushing in. They're just, and I don't have a problem with people breaking up violent protests, right? But if you're just standing there speaking your piece, you ought not be arrested for that. Okay. unblocking the streets, as Taj and a couple of other people have said. Yep, that's totally fine, right? You can't restrict all of commerce. The government has literally failed in their responsibility to listen to the reasonable demands of the protesters. Now, discussion and dialogue is not about give me everything I want or I'm going to riot down the city like BLM does. It's about here's my demands, here's my problems. Sit down with me and let's have a conversation. The federal government chose not to do that at all. It simply said, here's the act, we're going to do it. And I'm sorry, Josie, it wasn't because they wanted to prevent foreign money from coming in. That might have been you or I. They weren't trying to restrict foreign money coming in. They wanted to create a financial nightmare to force people to give up their right of protest. They did it there. They did the same friggin' thing with COVID in the United States as well. Okay. It's an immoral act. Better ways that they could have tried to get the message done. They chose to do it in the most egregious, totalitarian, ham-handed way possible. And I think enough's enough.
Okay. So I just want to say to everyone in chat that, there's a lot going on right now. Let's say that you're somebody who wants to get crypto or many other resources to protesters around the world or in Canada and other locations. Let's say you're a journalist in Afghanistan trying to do decent journalism on the Taliban's rule. Let's say that you're somebody on the border of Ukraine trying to cover a possible conflict that will kill tens of thousands of people. Let's say you're an American trying to keep your information private, then Surfshark VPN is for you. And that is today's sponsors of our stream. And there's a lot of useful things you can use Surfshark for. It can protect your internet browsing history from either authoritarian governments, third-party service providers, or any number of corporations who want to get their hands in your pocket. Even my employer himself, Jeff Bezos. It can protect you from his grubby little hands getting on your precious, precious information. And hey, we live in the age of the internet. Whether you like it or not, we're trying to democratize the internet, baby. And you having control of your information, your own privacy, that's something I think most of us on this panel would agree on. And that's why everybody on this panel would also agree that you should get Surfshark VPN. I've talked to all of them. They've all said, yes, get Surfshark VPN. It's crazy. Every single one of them agrees. Conservative, Democrat, they all agree. Surfshark VPN. And if any of them have VPN sponsorships with other companies, they actually have told me in private that those VPNs fucking suck. They're god awful. They're terrible. No one likes those VPNs. They're stupid. They're bad. And they're in cahoots with probably I don't know, the government of Myanmar, probably some bad cats, And that's why you should get Surfshark VPN, because they're not working with the government of Myanmar. But if you're within Myanmar, you can use Surfshark VPN. Wonderful. I'm sure that
I would like a piece of that profit.
Yeah, me too. I'm really important copy of my moves.
I feel like I'm entitled now.
This
has been used without my permission.
I don't think that's true. I think
that was very authoritarian of you.
I don't know what you're talking. Well, if I'm being authoritarian, maybe if you use Surfshark VPN, I wouldn't be so authoritarian. Did you ever think about that?
There you go.
Oh,
yeah, think about that.
Anyway,
let's go on
what
to
you're saying is you're mandating its use so you won't be so authoritarian.
Yes.
But until you get your way, you're going to be authoritarian. Way to go.
Was
Should I
not
just change your name to
voted
Trudeau?
in.
Wait. MPU, could you wait? MPU.
Capitalist daddy.
MPU, could you say that again? Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
No, that was good.
You're gonna ban me from your show?
I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, let's move on to the next topic, and the next topic is a simple one. It's kind of a ringamarole, okay, of a bunch of other topics, but it's quite simple. Recently, there was a polling release showing that a decent-sized portion of Americans do not want to see the former president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, run again. But this is the same time when he's ramping up obvious campaign efforts, and he's been hinting at the idea of running again or testing the waters. So my question to the room here is, should Trump run again? And if he does, would you vote for him? I'm going to start with MPU.
So there used to be this thing in the 60s where the the Democrats they were called yellow dog Democrats because they'd vote for a yellow dog before they'd vote for Republicans. I think a lot of people are looking at, the literal shit show that is the current administration and what it's actually doing. Not to say that it's the situation in the United States is not all the fault of the Biden administration. There's a lot of things that can add into it. However, he hasn't done a single thing that has reduced the negative impact of all of these other things that are going on. So with respect to, with honest respect, I don't know what Trump is going to do, but I think the concept of Trumpism, which is an America First policy to put the needs of everyday people in front of the needs of big special interests. And I get that you guys on the left, you always say, well, what about all those rich people that are getting all these tax breaks? You know what? They earned their money, and the government giving somebody a tax break isn't giving them shit. It's not taking shit. Okay. So we could actually, I'm sorry, it's opening, right?
Yes, it is.
So we actually have a disparate approach to how we fund government. The 16th Amendment really screws that up on its head, right? In the US, we have a progressive income tax system that literally says we are going to take more away from some people, and then we're gonna use it to fund the government. Okay, that's fine. But then the 17th Amendment, when the states lost their ability to actually have a say in regulating what the federal government does to the states, they went to popular election on the 17th Amendment. And then what happened is the federal government started getting a shitload of money. Okay. And then politicians, being the craven fucks that they are, they decided that they would come up with creative new ways to entice more people to vote for them. So they started expanding the whole concept of the welfare state, beginning in the 30s and exacerbating it in the 60s. And if you don't think if you think that is a financially sustainable path, regardless of what you think your moral claims are, you cannot keep doing that, because there will not be enough money to keep doing this for everybody. And then once everybody gets down to this little shit level, you're going to have people in politics who are making the money, doing the insider trades, and the rest of us are all going to be flat level Joes with no homes.
Okay, I'm going to throw it now over to...
One second. If Trump runs...
Going on a little bit. Yeah.
There's more.
I apologize. If Trump runs, compared to the alternatives, yeah, I'll fucking vote for him. I'll vote for him twice on Sunday, and call me a Democrat for doing it.
We'll throw it over to Splonker.
Let me tell you this. As a Canadian, my opinion is the most important one here. So you better listen. So here I'm here to tell you, Donald J. Trump. You know, that middle letter needs to be the J, because otherwise you have the wrong guy. Donald J. Trump is the guy that, to me, I don't know if you're expecting this type of government that will govern, in the future. It's not happening. Or a government that will be competent of any, anything like that is something you shouldn't look for. So what you should look for is, if you don't know, he's doing the fit. We got this guy up top here. There's a guy who's doing the same moves as I am. He did this, So anyways, we had WWE, Hulk Hogan versus The Rock. We have, John Cena versus The Rock. The Rock is usually the guy in there. But we have, Muhammad Ali versus Mike Tyson. These dream matches. This is what you want, really. You don't give a fuck about the actual politics about it. What you want is Donald J. Trump. He is the headliner. I don't know about anybody. What, Ted Cruz? What, he's a boring piece of garbage. Maybe you have DeSantis, but really, he's boring as well. If you want Donald Trump versus Biden, was funny. He's funny. He's not fun, but he's funny. Maybe you want the comeback of Clinton, something like that. But to me, I don't give a fuck about your politics. I want a showdown. I want Donald J. Trump versus The Rock. That's what I want, really. In a cage match. It's up to you.
Taft?
Yeah, great. Should Trump run again? No. And would I vote for Trump? No, because Trump is an incompetent, narcissistic buffoon who is not really going to get anything meaningfully done. He promised to reduce corruption in the government. He failed to do so, failed to get his border wall, failed. Complete disaster. What we need is someone who can actually deliver on promises and someone who is going to be a conservative force, not for 4 years, not in this temporary way, but make meaningful cultural change to the right. And I think in order to do that, you need first an intellectual movement. So I have no confidence in Trump's ability to actually do anything meaningful, and I don't intend to vote for him.
Gonna throw it over to Josie.
Okay. I just a little side note. Somebody just subscribed for me for 12 months straight. This is my 1 year. So I was like, it was the first one that's happened. And I'm just like, woo. Anyway, sorry, not making this about me. So anyways, I think that Donald Trump is a danger to our democracy. And if we were to see him in office, and I'll prove I'm going to give a little points here. We have already seen evidence showing that he wanted to use the military to seize voting machines. He has instigated violent protests on our sacred capital. He has done so many things that have proven to show that he doesn't care about the democratic process and has no respect for the democratic institution, and not taking a loss when he lost. Even when he didn't get the popular vote in 2016, we still said, okay, he won because of the electoral process system. But even this time, when he lost the popular vote again, he didn't win the electoral votes, and he tried to circumvent the system. I think that it would be a disaster for our democratic process. I don't think we're going to have an option. I think that he's going to run. It seems like he's positioned to run. And my biggest fear is that he's going to use this as a shield to protect him from the crimes that are starting when the chickens are coming home to roost, with a lot of the tax fraud that he's been dealing with, the fact that the accountant company that runs the Trump business has now pulled out and said all the taxes that they filed are no longer valid. So all of those things are starting to pile up. And I believe that Donald Trump is using this to A, get out of his crimes, and B, circumvent our democracy to a point where we won't recognize it anymore. And I'll say, as a veteran that fought for this country, I'm so afraid of losing that democratic process, of losing what we fought for as Americans. And if you want to be proud of this country, then we should be fighting against Donald Trump, because he's going against our fundamental democracy and the Constitution of which it stands. So I am wholly opposed to Donald Trump. And if he runs, I believe that he's doing it on criminal activity, and he's trying to circumvent our democracy.
Let me rip.
Of course, I don't want to see him vote or run. Of course, I'm not going to vote for him. He's a giant narcissist that's ineffective, and I'm glad he was, because while I appreciate his calls that he's going to drain the swamp, he's just another really rich man who's claiming he's not, claiming he's for the people, and being a giant disappointment, as typical of politicians, many politicians. Not all, but many.
Rhizome?
Yeah, I think last election, the fact that it was so close shows a failing of our system, though. I'm not going to vote for Trump. I don't think Trump is an effective leader. He proved that. All he uses the government to do is self-aggrandize and enrich himself and his buddies as much as he can. But I think the fact that we can't run a popular platform from the left and actually have momentum behind that due to the way that electoral politics happens in our country is a huge issue. I think the platform or the populism that Trump speaks to is something that we should be speaking to on the left, but I don't hear that at all. And I feel like it's an indicator to us on the left that we should be putting up better platforms that appeal to people. We should have better advocacy. We should make our machine as well oiled as the right-wing pipeline is, in terms of organizing, mobilizing, agitating people, trying to build bridges and bring people over, as opposed to trying to use the DNC and like the DNC's candidates to like appeal to the most status quo person. We should try to bring in people and galvanize the left and put momentum behind it. So I look at Trump as a threat in a way, but I look at him as like an inevitability when our system is such that nobody can put their faith in it anymore.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over now to Christian.
Yeah, so a few things here. I probably don't want him to run, if only well, there's many reasons, but if only for I'm tired of the straw man. I'm tired of him being pointed whenever a substantive policy discussion comes up and he's the president, he was pointed out as the person who supported that thing and therefore it was invalid or whatever. I'm tired of the straw man. I'm tired of the distraction. He had a lot of antics that were not at all conducive to a healthy political discourse, going on Twitter and getting into spats with people, calling people names, just things that are not, although these things are not uncommon amongst presidents. A lot of presidents have done the exact same thing in private, even if they didn't do it in public. And back in the 1700s, I mean, goodness, presidents were doing this stuff in 1800s left and right. They were attacking people. They were having gunfights. That was Andrew Jackson did. So, I mean, this idea that he wasn't presidential, I think presidentialness is arbitrary, to say the least. But the bigger problem here, if we zoom out a little bit, a lot of people ignore what Trump tapped into at their own peril. The people who Trump talked to were not simply racist, homophobes, or whatever. These were people who have felt not represented, who have felt not heard for so many years, who have been paid lip service by all kind of empty suits, and who found something of permanence in Trump. Now, it's wrong to find that in anybody, but that rage and that desire is real. And there are plenty of people who are not, mean, who are very educated, very intelligent, who supported him because they were tired of what they were receiving from the current status quo. And that desire is going to stay there, and it's going to latch on to a different figure if Trump fades away. So that must be addressed, that must be talked to, that must be understood. And if you dismiss it, you will wake a sleeping giant again, and you may get someone who's much smarter, much craftier, and much more manipulative than Trump ever could be. And if the field is as it is right now, we have one person who is just like that on the horizon who could possibly get the nomination. I won't say who it is, but you guys I'll leave that to imagination. So it's my opinion.
All right.
Well, I'm going to go against the grain a little bit here, Dylan. I'm going to go ahead and put my support behind Donald Trump for the GOP's nom in 2024 because I think that would be the easiest W for round 2 for my president, Joseph R. Biden. We put a whooping on Trump in 2020, and we were just getting started, baby. The walls are closing in. January 6th select committees just getting warmed up. Criminal investigations in 2 states, New York and Georgia. If Donald Trump is your nominee and you clowns did this to yourselves, GOP, you're screwed. You know that cancer's not going anywhere. If Donald Trump gets the nomination, Joe Biden could win the presidency in 2024 in a medically induced coma, and you know I'm right. You know I'm right.
He's trying to outshine me.
That's you done? You just were at like a peak and then you just kind of cut off there. It's like it's like you flatlined. It was like I thought you died for a second. You had such high energy that just stopped.
Mic drop.
Yeah. Okay.
Ready
Okay.
to vote a
That's
second
all.
time.
That's
Okay.
it, baby. Let's go.
Raise
Trump
your-
2024. Let's go.
Raise your hand if you want to start us off. Okay. MPU it is.
Yeah. So I want to be really clear here, right? I'm not a fan of Trump's personal behavior, right? Like he the way he tweets, the way he engages, he goes after people when he feels, and this is the Brooklyn thing or New York thing, right? He goes after, he punches back, right? He punches back with both fists. That is not really becoming in a politician. But let's also not forget that Sleepy Joe said that he wanted to take people out behind barns and beat the shit out of them too. He does the same shit. He just doesn't do it with as much flair. And as far as running for office, in a medically induced coma. That's exactly what the fuck he did last time, IRI. He was asleep in his goddamn basement, man. So, look.
And he still won. Ain't that something?
People can say, well,
Yeah, I
people
still
can
won.
say, look.
Couldn't get 100 people to a rally. He still won.
Stop it. It gets to the point when you look objectively at the things that affected Americans as a whole in this country during the 4 years that he was president. Employment decreased, labor participation rate increased, unemployment levels for every demographic increased, for every demographic except women, 40, 50, 60-year highs. Okay, women 40-year highs. Okay, people had more money. Income inequality, this thing that Democrats love to ratchet on, okay, actually decreased for the first time in 40 years. All of these
Thanks,
things.
Obama.
We got
Why are we
income.
doing
Hang on,
this?
stop. Let me. You can have the floor in a second. When we talk about, like, okay, Biden says, well, we come in and wages went up. They went up the fastest rate in forever. Guess what also went up the fastest rate in ever? Inflation, 40-year highs, month over month. Oh, it's transitory. It's just going to be transitory. No problem. It's going to go away. No, it's going to be here until end of next year. No, now it's into 2023.
Wow, MPU, it's kind of like when new presidents come in, the stuff the old president was doing has an impact, huh?
Inflation, 10% inflation.
Wait.
This is the argument you guys did, right? It was
MPU,
Bush's
you literally just contradicted yourself, though. You're saying, oh, Trump had all this economic growth because of the Obama administration that pulled everything across the line. But the second Joe Biden now inflation jumps up, and now it's his fault. You realize the difference?
You know where inflation's coming from? It's coming from 40% of all dollars ever printed in the United States were printed in the last 18 fucking months. That's why we have inflation.
Wait,
MPU.
what? That's not how
MPU,
that works.
why does Germany have 5% inflation and France? Like, why do other countries have inflation right now?
Look, I don't give a fuck about those countries.
Oh, you don't give a fuck.
Yeah, that's probably not well relevant. Just coincidental.
I have no supply chain. It does what it does. It makes prices go up.
I don't live there.
Stop.
You asked me a question, I'm going to answer.
When you
stop. Everybody stop, please. Okay, I can't hear anybody. So MPU, answer the question quickly, because I know there's other people who want to talk, but he was asked a question, so he should be able to answer it.
Yeah, so I don't care what people in other countries think. Okay, I don't care about what their prescriptive policies are, because those politicians are supposed to be responsive to the needs of their constituency. So what Germany has no bearing on what we have here. I know what we have here now. I know what we had 2 years ago.
Bro, there is inflation worldwide, and you're just dismissing that as it just happened. Like, do you not see the disconnect there?
This is America, brother.
When I did my opening, I explicitly said it is not all laid at the feet of the Biden administration. There are global issues that are certainly affecting it, but some of the things that really adversely affect our inflation are energy costs. Energy costs are 50% higher today than they were in 2020.
And what is energy? It's fuel, right? Gas, oil. It's weird because gas is expensive in France, and all over the world too.
Energy goes into everything, and when you put that much of a shock, you obviously are not a student of history. You don't understand what happened in 1973 and 1979, which led to stagflation in the 1981-82.
But stagflation is when you have high inflation
that were 18%. You're on the same fucking track for that stuff, and you want to. Biden's a great guy. Biden doesn't do anything. He has fucked up every single thing he has touched since he took office.
Listen, stagflation.
What good thing has he done? I defy you to show me one good thing he's done.
Pulled out of Afghanistan, $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, infrastructure deal that Trump fumbled for 4 years.
9% of the infrastructure plan is infrastructure. The rest is a wealth redistribution scheme.
Okay. MPU, you asked him a question. He was answering the question. Ira, you can continue.
Well, I could send him a long list of things, but Joe Biden had
Please
the
do.
guts to get us out of Afghanistan, $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. And the reason why we have more inflation here is because our GDP's on fire. Absolutely on fire, and demand is outpacing supply. The whole world's dealing with this, but we're doing so well here with our economic recovery. We're down to 3.8 unemployment. By the way, stagflation is when you have high unemployment and high inflation, and our unemployment is very low. Hello,
40
our
years,
employment's
40 years
very
low.
low. Most jobs created in 1 year.
40-year low labor
6.6
rate.
million. I can give you a nice long list. Most judges confirmed in his first year since the Reagan era. Boy, I could go on forever.
Do you know how unemployment is calculated?
Number of people who don't have job.
People who stop looking for work.
You know what is a significant contributor to that? The labor force participation rate. If you take people out of the workforce because they can't find jobs or aren't allowed to work because of COVID mandate bullshit, then there's fewer people to work. So yeah, obviously there are more, that it looks like more people are actually fucking working. Do a little bit of fucking homework, IRI, and stop memeing. Take the
You're starting to get angry.
I mean,
look at the evidence.
When
I
you shut down an
he's getting bodied
because
he starts cursing.
People who think that Donald Trump is going to be the worst thing since sliced bread.
Okay.
Okay,
let's quiet down.
Out of the Democratic
We're quieting down, and I'm gonna
take my hat off.
We're going
I'll put two hats on.
We're quiet. I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep myself calm.
Okay, you can be the Anthony Fauci of hats.
Okay. We're gonna move it over to Christian. Wait, I'm going the wrong direction. Christian, over here.
When you shut down an economy for 2 years, when you flood the money supply with a bunch of printed stuff, when you basically put onerous restrictions on truckers in California, which is what Newsom did, which makes it harder for them to have more truckers to deliver goods. When all these things come together, you end up getting inflation. And of course, there are other things going on as well, but I'm too tired to remember all of them. And so this idea that somehow because Biden is in office and the GDP is going up, it's an economic success. No, it's the result of economies opening up after years of being frozen, because a lot of those economies, a lot of those governors, thought it appropriate to lock down their entire economy to beat back COVID. That's why you're seeing all these problems happen right now. Now, you can make the argument that President Trump didn't do very much to intervene in those states that shut down the economy, and that's correct. But there's a principle called federalism that might explain that. The president doesn't have the right, according to the 10th Amendment, to do that kind of stuff. So that's why you're seeing this crisis right now, and any other explanation is just nonsense.
So why are we doing better than other countries, though? Because they're all opening up too.
Yeah, and you've had several of those countries who have had to shut down, open up. Like you've had France several times over the past year had to shut down, open up, because guess what? Their science and their data is going all actually, their conception of the science and data is going all haywire. It goes up and down, and the cases are going up and down. They're flatlining right now, thankfully, which is why you're seeing a lot of places get rid of their mask mandates and so on. But for over the past 2 years, they've been going up and down. They haven't had any consistent way to deal with it, so they basically have been reactionary. You've seen governments in Europe be entirely reactionary towards COVID, and that's not a good thing either.
I'll let other people weigh in, but I could talk about this all day.
I'm sure.
And it still would make any sense.
Screwdriver.
Right,
One thing that's just interesting to me is that MPU's first point was like, okay, well, under Trump, we saw all of these things come into fruition. And under Biden, we see all these horrible things come into fruition while missing the same cause for both of those things, which was the previous president.
Right.
How is Trump responsible for inflation?
Yeah.
Explain that to me.
Yeah, please
explain that to me.
Elucidate.
I'm curious because Trump didn't shut down the economy. It was Kate Bush. It was people like Whitmer. It was people like all those people did it.
If we can
Trump literally did
steel
shut down
man this
the
argument, the argument would be that during COVID,
it was the state governors that did it. IRI.
And when the economy grew back under Biden, that inflation all hit at once, whereas it should have been more prolonged. So the steel man version of the argument is to say that Trump's policies made the pandemic worse, and we're seeing the effects of those rolled into the economy now.
How did it
What
make
do you
it
mean
worse?
how? You don't know how Trump made the pandemic worse.
No, I'm asking you, what policies did Trump pass that made the pandemic worse? Because he quite literally gave everyone stimulus checks, which actually may have made things worse on a different level. But I assume you guys wouldn't be opposed to people having stimulus checks when they're unemployed, are you?
So
I mean, if you
the
are, very
argument
good.
is about like the economy did like a V shape, right? Where things tanked for a brief amount of time and then they recovered. And so the argument is going to be that during the recovery, we expect to see inflation because that inflation is not occurring previously when the economy is making its dip. So basically, if you look at like the bottom point of the dip and you compare that to now, it looks like the economy grew like a ton, right? But it also looks like inflation increased a bunch. So it's sort of, the argument would be like, you need to look at things on a bigger time scale.
Right.
Sure.
I agree.
And for the first, year or so, Biden was in support of lockdowns. Now his administration's like, oh no, we don't want lockdowns. We don't want that.
That's because
they
things
realized
got
they're
better.
stupid.
Right. They were in support of lockdowns.
No,
lockdowns,
it wasn't because we realized they're
The
stupid.
lockdowns-
That's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
that's silly.
lockdowns
We have people
They realize that
vaccinated.
they're not politically tenable.
The lockdowns contributed.
Okay, wait. We'll let Watson finish, then we'll have people respond.
The lockdowns contributed to what you're seeing, this sort of artificial inflation of GDP and inflation. So yeah, I used the same word in the same sentence. Lucky me. But yeah, that's the lockdowns contributed to it. If you hadn't had people's businesses shuttered in the name of public health, you wouldn't be having this economic turmoil right now. We were in. I am a part of Gen Z. I'm Gen Z, and in my generation, this is the first time we're really experiencing inflation. More Perfect Union's generation experienced it in the 70s, but this is really the first time we're experiencing inflation, and that is because of an artificial crisis created by power-hungry politicians who have no idea.
Wait a minute.
It was artificial.
We had
It was
the number
artificial.
one death.
Yes.
Hold on.
No, well,
yeah,
hold on.
I mean, do you
What's
want to
that
say
mean?
no, because wait a second.
What is
You're
that? How's that
trying to
even
say
relevant?
you're trying to say right now that lockdowns because businesses got shuttered is a problem. Do you realize that if we just let the economy go at full clip when we were losing people at a higher rate because nobody was vaccinated and people were dying like crazy? Like that,
The economy
is that better?
No.
Because people
Is
are
that- it
willingly
wouldn't have gone.
restricting
Fatality rate for
themselves.
this
No,
disease.
Exactly.
no,
They're
the
under
fatality that
0.3%.
was because of the things that we were doing to prevent people from getting exposed to COVID by locking down schools, doing all of that stuff. And then as soon as vaccines came out,
at least
oh my God, are you really shutting me down?
Wait a minute.
Shutting
No,
me down
stop.
right
You
now?
look
a
up.
little bit, but there are
Hospitalization.
at least 2 studies.
Guys, shut up.
Okay.
Thank you. Jeez.
Now
What
we're gonna have Josie finish.
I don't want to respond to that, Dylan.
Okay, but wait, can you say that again? More Perfect Union?
It's fine.
No. Sorry.
I want to respond.
No.
to
No,
I want to respond.
No.
to
No.
Josie.
No.
I want to respond.
No. You see, nothing's gained there, right? So we're gonna have Josie finish,
Gotcha.
and then you're gonna respond, MPU. And Watson, I've written your name down. Is there anybody else who wants their name written down?
Okay.
Josie.
So let me finish my point. The fact of the matter is, when we started, when the pandemic was wild, the wild COVID strain, and we didn't have any protections with vaccines to help people get the survivability rate up, that was a time where people were just dying, and it was very scary. It is a situation that was very visceral, real. If we did not shut down schools and shut down those businesses, then people would have died even more so, and that would have hurt the economy even more from the fact that we would have had more mass fatalities, not only just on an economic scale, but also an emotional scale for the country to lose that many people. Now, we know with the COVID booster with Omicron that the chances of death are extremely low, like to a point where it's not even really an issue anymore when it comes down to the issues that are actually happening. So the material things have changed on the ground, and that's why the lockdowns aren't as necessary as much anymore, because we figured out how to solve and deal with this issue. So the fact that you're saying, oh, now things are opening up because of the bad idea is not true. It's opening up because we're actually beating the virus because of science, because of the policies that we instilled that actually saved the way that we're doing things and saved millions of lives. millions of lives because COVID's still like the number three death rate in the entire country, for example. So yeah, that's my point.
So I can go now?
Yes.
I can go now? Okay, so there's at least 2 studies, Josie, that said that the effect of lockdowns and mask mandates and shit was bupkis. It was negligible on the mortality. Okay, I'll post them in his Discord later for you to take a look at because I know you love the research. Okay, and first and secondly, most of the policies, that are involved with this stuff are not based in science. Not based in science. We have Anthony Fauci saying, "Don't wear masks are not going to help you. They're only for the sick." And then it was like, everybody's got to wear a mask. And they said, "Okay, well let's governors, let's just put all the old people." And they figured this out pretty early on. Let's put all the old people in COVID wards in long-term care facilities, nursing homes, and we'll see, well, where are most of the deaths coming from? Oddly enough, it's where you packed in the most highly susceptible. And the vast majority of people in this country, actually, if you got COVID, you weren't going to die from it in the early days. As we started rolling out vaccine, stop.
Yes.
We start going through the progression. As we start going through the progression, and everybody says, "Okay, well, it looks like the biggest part of the first wave is over," and then we start seeing South African variant, right? Well, Delta variant, right? So it was the South African variant. Now it's the Delta variant. Okay, so the Delta variant comes out whatever.
South Africa.
Oh, I was reported in South Africa. I don't care.
Omicron.
The African virus, right? We got you, brother. Don't worry.
But, hang on. The second wave comes out, right? And now it says, "Oh no! Now we got to go back into lockdowns again." Okay, and what they started to see that as we I don't care about edge cases.
It's not an edge case.
We're saying,
but Delta was something that affected my family greatly.
That's fine. It anecdotally affected you. It affected my family too. My brother and my niece both had Delta. Shut up. Let me finish making my fucking point. Okay. So these things, they come back in the waves, and then the government keeps coming back around and says, well, guess what? We got to lock down again. So that first stimulus check that you got, then by the end of Trump's administration, they said, well, now we got to have another one. And Trump made a fucking mistake where he said, no, we got to have $2,000 checks. Congress said, no, we'll give you $1,400. And then they turned around under Biden and they gave him the extra. They gave him the extra bump. Okay, so we keep working around through all this bullshit. Okay, and then suddenly we have, well, the booster, it might not be good. So Delta variant is a new variant, right? But they didn't update the vaccine. They did. I don't care. I'm gonna look to my audience. They upgraded. They didn't upgrade the vaccine. They said, well, we'll just give you a booster. A booster is a half dose. Okay. And you're suddenly going to be okay if you do that. Well, guess what? They found that as they started getting a larger majority of people in the country vaccinated and then boosted, what they saw was that a stunning amount people who were vaccinated and boosted were actually contracting COVID Delta variant.
But they survivability.
Almost like science.
Here's the last little tidbit. That knocks the whole science argument down in the dirt. Now, if you're fully vaxxed, if you're fully vaxxed and fully boosted, guess what? You're 6.1 times more likely to contract COVID Omicron than if you had not been vaccinated at all.
What about death?
Wait, Omicron? I don't know what that is. What country is that from?
But more perfect union. You got to realize something about
Omicron
the contraction
also came out of
that.
South Africa.
Just use common sense here,
Africa.
okay? Do you know why more vaccinated people getting COVID is because they were more confident about going out in the public because they didn't think they were going to die. Because if you actually had vaccination. No, it's because of the fact that they knew that their survivability.
It has to do with how you
Okay, shut up. Everybody shut the fuck up. I can't hear myself think. I'm hearing Taft, I'm hearing Josie, I'm hearing Rhizome, I'm hearing MPU. I can't even hear myself think. Okay,
we love you, Dylan.
Who wants to speak?
Okay, I have a point in favor of Josie Rose, right? When you're looking at the measurement.
So she's muted because that wasn't my question. I didn't say it was time to speak. I was like, who wants to speak? She raised her hand and then just started talking. I don't know how that fucking works. I just have
30 seconds.
Do you want to be next? Okay, let me finish. I'm trying to get an order here so we can go on a process. Okay, so we're gonna have MPU, We're gonna have Taft. Okay, who else? IRI. Anybody else? No? Okay. So that's the general order. If people want to respond to a specific point, they can, but that's the general order we're going in. MPU, you start us off.
Yeah, I lost my point.
Okay,
I'll think
Taft.
about it later.
Okay, I mean, like in regards to what Josie is saying, if you look at like Omicron and the level of infection that it is and where we are like culturally, it's not surprising that lots of vaccinated people are going to get the Omicron, right? Because lots of people are vaccinated. So the extent to which people are getting the Omicron variant, it's of course going to be vaccinated people. So this is like not really shocking that the vast majority of people who get it are vaccinated. So I think there's like a little bit thing there, but I will say that like liberals are some of like the most delusional people on COVID, right? And they do the exact same thing as conservatives, just in like the other direction. They massively overestimate like the deadliness of the virus, and they massively overestimate the ability of like certain lockdown measures to actually deliver results. Like we don't have good data suggesting that like mask mandates are super effective. We just like don't have a lot of good data showing that like cloth masks are effective. These are like very specific claims, but like it's good to get more data on these things, but like liberals just like vastly overstate like the case in a lot of situations.
And so does people like more perfect
Dylan.
Union.
Oh,
No,
yeah,
I'm-
that's
no,
true.
hang on, hang on.
That's true.
Wait,
I remembered
no,
my
no.
thought.
Oh, well.
I remembered my
Can I-
thought if I could.
Oh, Lord. We
So,
heard a lot of your
MPU,
thoughts already.
The,
No,
well,
it's just,
MPU,
it's
well,
just 30
MPU,
seconds.
okay, well, the moment passed.
It's
You
never 30
forgot it. You
seconds
dropped
with
it.
you.
We'll get the ball back to you, okay? But if you fumble
Okay.
at the line, you can't
No,
expect
you're-
everybody
no,
to pause
you're
the
right.
game. You
I
know?
accept.
Yep,
I accept
okay.
the judgment of the moderator.
Okay, we'll get back to you. I promise. You're on the list.
I'll write it down this time.
Good
so
idea.
the CDC came out with data pretty recently.
It's all those
saying
trucker
that masks are
fog, like the emissions from the cars and the trucks. Iri.
I don't know what that was, but sure.
The CDC actually came out with data pretty recently that even surgical masks are like 50% effective in preventing the transmission of COVID, and the N95 ones are up to like 85%. So there is data out there. I don't know, Taft, if you missed
N95s are
that.
He says
very good.
that's fake
Yeah.
science.
Yeah,
I don't know who to believe.
I've heard enough of the bro science from the bottom two, so let me just get this out. You can Google
I
it
don't know who to
later
believe
if you
here.
want.
Of course he's
Second
right.
of all, thank you. You can look it up yourself. Masks are effective. I don't know why you guys are coming up with this. And Josie
Everyone's
is correct.
talking
At
about the
beginning-
ineffectiveness of cloth masks, though.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, precisely. That's what I said.
Come
I
on.
said
Even a
cloth masks. There's
Come on,
no
you said-
randomized control trials of cloth masks showing their effectiveness. So that,
Mr.
that's
Big
my
Hat.
point. And I
Okay.
agree with you that N95 masks are very effective. The problem is that like when you do a mask mandate, you're not mandating people of N95 masks or really providing people with those. So if you did that, if you like provided people with like free access to N95s, that would be like, I'm guessing that would be a really effective policy. The problem is that like mask mandates are so loose in what they allow you to do that people end up using these like dirty, overused cloth masks, and it's not like helping. So
It's still better than nothing.
I don't know if it is.
Is it?
right?
That is so
Yes,
specious.
Because
there's
we're-
data that
so-
shows. I mean, how are we 3 years into this and we're still teaching this? Also, I want to say to MPU,
No.
you can get
Oh,
COVID.
There's
You
studies
can
that
get
show that
COVID.
there's-
Hey, hold on, man. Please don't operate heavy machinery. Also, I want to say MPU. You can get COVID with the vaccine, bro. How are we still teaching this 3 years on year number 3? Anybody can get COVID. That's not the point of the vaccine. How are you saying?
Yeah.
Do you-
Wait.
Do you know
Everyone
what? Do you know
knows
what the
that.
definition of a vaccine is?
Wait. It depends.
No.
It seems like there are
From
different
getting
people that have
No.
different
For what?
standards for vaccines, right? It seems like I have a higher standard for what a vaccine does than you guys. And if you are
Give me
fine
the
with
FDA's version of it.
whatever the FDA's version, whatever. I want a vaccine where if I take it, it's like the polio vaccine. I don't get polio after. But if you're fine
That's
with
the
this other
FDA's
type of
version.
vaccine, that's fine.
Yeah, so vaccine,
I'm
according to
just
the
speaking right
FDA,
now. What I want is like we all have, it seems like that's fine. We can have different versions of what our standards of a vaccine is, and that I can find. But that's why we can't mandate it because it seems like you have a different standard. It seems like for you, a vaccine that seems like it prevents you from having severe symptoms and maybe prevents you from having a hospitalization, but really you don't know because you can't tell.
No, we know.
You
We have
know,
No.
We don't.
Here's
We
how.
have
No.
the data.
It's
Studies.
so
I know that
goofy that they're
studies. I know that
mandating them.
studies show that this is the case. But what you cannot tell is on the individual basis, right? If you get COVID and you are vaccinated and you get severe symptoms, you cannot tell me that you know that at 100% at 100% that if you weren't vaccinated, those symptoms would have been less. You don't know this.
So
We do know this.
No, not at 100%. No. This is generally the case.
What's happening?
This is generally the case. But not at 100%. You can't tell that
it's
Nothing's
like a
100%.
thing to make. Yes, on average, the vaccine decreases your symptoms. Anyway,
Of course.
like I wear an N95 mask when I go out because I think it's good. I think it's really important to like mask
Awesome.
up, and I care about not spreading COVID to people and reducing the viral load if I get it. Right. So if we like have a mask mandate that like provides people N95s and mandates those, I think is great. But like the way that we have it now, people who really care about like the science and the safety of people, they're going to make sure they're using the masks effectively and they're using the right kinds of masks. Right. But those people are going to do that with or without the mandate because, you know, they care about the issue. And so the people who don't care about the issue are going to use like shitty, ineffective masks. So like the degree to which the government is like mandating things, I think, you know, we can point to like examples of N95s being really effective, and I agree. But like as a government policy, I just think it needs tuning.
Oh, she wants it heavier. That's worse.
If you're going to have it, it needs to be heavier.
But that's why you don't want it, right? Because then
think it's
there's
debatable,
maybe a
like-
mask that's more effective than that one, and
Well, I
then
do
we
think
should
it's
probably
like
move
a
to that
debate.
one.
Because if you ask like the public health experts, they're going to tell you wear the masks. Masks will reduce like the total cases. Now, I think there's an argument that like maybe we need to involve other experts and ask like psychologists or economists, like, okay, maybe we should optimize for other things rather than just like total, you know, COVID cases. Maybe that's an argument that you can make, but like insofar as you are optimizing for like the lowest COVID deaths and the lowest COVID cases, then yeah, in order for like a mask mandate to be truly effective, you do need to provide people with N95s and then make that the standard.
If that's your goal, yeah, you're right.
What was the topic again?
I'm gonna throw it now over.
Oh,
Should
it's
Trump
Trump.
run again? But I'm gonna throw it over to MPU, and I'm gonna write down Rhizome. I have Christian's name written down. Too.
Yeah. So, Splonker, you're 100% right. Your definition of what a vaccine is exactly what the FDA defines it as. Okay. What the COVID vaccine isn't a vaccine. It is a therapeutic. It mitigates severity of symptoms and does a pretty good job of preventing people from dying as a result of the vaccine. Okay. The CDC said for 2 years, almost 2 years, that if you got the shot, you wouldn't get COVID. They said it prevented. That's bullshit. You could go back. All you got to do is do any internet search of Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Wrong.
Stop. Let me finish. I'm speaking.
Correct.
Okay.
You're wrong.
Just look him up.
Wrong.
Look him up. Okay.
Wrong.
So, with respect to masks, before Congress, Anthony Fauci told Congress, everybody's pretty much going to get Omicron. That to me is a stunning rebuke of the construct of wearing a mask. Okay. Period. Oh,
No,
and
'cause
then
the
the other
point of
thing,
wearing a mask is
and
that
then
you
Taj, you were
slow it.
talking about people wearing masks, right? If we all wear N95 masks, that would be great. It would be great, except for people like Rhizome and me who have beards, and IRI who's got some kind of scruff hanging off his chin. Okay,
I'm trying.
that you
Come
can't
on.
get a good seal. You can't get a good seal. Okay, so it's not gonna fucking work. Okay, yeah. What is it? It stops me from somebody spitting in my mouth, sure, but then it's just gonna go around the mask and come up on the inside. Come on,
Yeah,
man.
my beard is
Is
a
that an
permanent part of
issue?
my
It
body.
helps
I
to a
can't
very
be
small
without it,
degree.
otherwise I will
Are
die.
you
Well, I
an
think it's
immutable
really
characteristic, I
totalitarian
get
to
that.
force people to shave their beards, right?
Wait, my perfect union. Are
Hey,
you
that
afraid
was
of
my
people
30
randomly
seconds thing.
spitting in your face? Good. I'm sorry.
Does that happen often?
Not random. I'm
Yeah.
not
Only
saying
Democrats.
randomly.
Only Democrats. Only
Okay.
Democrats. Most people are actually pretty nice to me because in regular conversation, okay, with people that are logical, I get along very well with them. I
Bring
like to
the
think. I would like to think
The
if I
guy-
sat
the
down
guy
with
that-
you, Josie, we could actually have a beer. I could sit across the table from any of you guys and have a beer. No sweat. I think you're all great people.
The rhizome over here that wants my funds taken away from my government, me and him might get in this little beef.
You mean the racist?
The racist,
Yeah,
the racist.
Being racist, Blonker. Don't worry.
You're severe racism, and I'm against it.
Let me throw it over to Christian for the time being.
What? I got cucked, dude. I haven't responded.
You're next.
Oh, okay.
Man, that was a lot. So there are two things. Number one, I think the bigger issue I have with vaccine mandates, I personally, the efficacy of the vaccine, all that stuff, right at this point, it's way beyond me. It's been a very long day. I'm tired. So that's way beyond me. I'm double vaccinated. I'm not triple vaccinated because I don't feel the need to. Only reason I got vaccinated was because when I was in the only reason actually, someone did tell me that if I'm in a majority black town, I'm not vaccinated, I'm committing violence against black people. I was told that before. So anyway, but so I got vaccinated because I was forced to by the university. I just graduated at university, so that's why I got vaccinated. So I didn't really care to. I got COVID back in January. I had a very mild case. I isolated myself. I made sure I was not around anyone. I drank a lot of fluids, had zinc, vitamin D, everything that we knew at the beginning of the pandemic to do to make sure your symptoms are not severe at all. I did, and I was totally fine. Went away after a week. There are people who were much healthier than me who had it for much longer and still don't have their smell. So I don't really care about that. What I care about is what the vaccine mandate, or what any mandate on this level tries to do. It attempts to instill virtue into people's hearts. It attempts to instill care for others into people's hearts. That kind of desire cannot be instilled through force of coercion. That kind of desire can only be instilled through habituation of good moral values and good practices that follow those values. Any attempt to try to make others care for you or care for your health, which, by the way, is not public at all. It's a fundamentally individual thing. And the effects of COVID actually proves this, because not everyone's body responds to COVID the exact same way. This is an established fact. It's a fundamentally individual thing. To try to compel someone to care for you in an individual matter is an attempt, is, in my opinion, a sign that you don't think you have the ability to talk to them and reason with them otherwise. Most people don't want to kill their neighbors. Most people are fundamentally respectful people. There are people that are aberrations of that, of course, but most folks, as was seen before the mandates even happened, I was fired from my job before my state even shut down. And because my boss said, I don't want to endanger any of you guys. I'm sorry, have a nice day. And that happened to so many other people as well. So most people already want to have community preserved, and that requires not killing someone. So you just can't mandate virtue. It has to be instilled by community, by good values, and by free will. And that is what I don't think leftists get, and that is why I'm fundamentally against vaccine mandates.
I want to ask you a real quick question. So do you believe that anti-discrimination actually...
Say again, you cut out.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Do you believe that anti-discrimination bills and laws are useful?
I think they're immoral. They're wrong.
So you legend.
So wait,
yes. Morality.
So you're saying a law that says that people can't discriminate against you because you're a black person is immoral?
Yes.
So you think it's morally just for somebody to be able to discriminate against you?
No. Well, I didn't say that. I said forcing someone to not discriminate against me, to not discriminate against me. Excuse me, I'm tired. Is unjust. Yes, particularly if they're a private business. Now, if they're a government institution, then they have an obligation to serve the public, obviously. So that doesn't.
But you would need an anti-discrimination law for that.
No. So if they apply,
so they are useful.
No. So no. Anti-discrimination laws voted against private people is immoral, yes. So this is why I'm against Section 3 of the Civil Rights Act. I think people should be able to do what they want in a free society, and I should be able to take my business elsewhere if I want to, and I have. I mean, for example,
government institution, and that's different.
For example, I'm a gay black man. I know of businesses that have refused to serve me because I'm gay. Well, guess what? I'm not going to give you my money anywhere. So why would I? And thank you for telling me, by the way, because I'm not going to finance your bigotry. So as everyone can do in a free society, I just walk away and I do my own thing. And that's what we need to get back to.
What if it's every business in that town? Do you move?
Okay. Yes, I will not move, but I would go somewhere. I mean, just
Wait,
because
there's nowhere
something
else to go because
just
it's all
That's where
racist.
freedom of speech and expression comes in.
Okay,
You need
okay.
to really
Now, wait. Let's
change
pause,
those
pause,
communities.
pause. Okay, we're
Let me
closing this.
finish.
Stop. Well, I'll let Christian finish his
Trump, right?
response because he deserved it. But I also want to say this is pretty off base from what our original discussion was.
Yeah.
It's gotten pretty far.
Right.
We've gotten to vaccines, and then we're to this, and I feel like that's not what the topic was originally based on. So I'm gonna let Christian respond, and we're
Just
gonna
back
probably
off.
drag it in towards ending this because I know Christian's very tired, and some of us also are. So Christian,
Very considerate.
and I have to
Dylan.
make the big announcement. Continue.
Yes, of course. No, yeah. So I'm not justifying bigotry. I'm justifying coercion to end bigotry. There's a big difference. And I just don't think that it's moral for a government to use coercion to correct someone's heart. The heart is a fundamentally private thing that can only be corrected by reflection. This is kind of the Daryl Davis principle. Daryl Davis going towards in talking with Klansmen, trying to get them to reflect on the behavior. And guess what? Through that, a lot of them actually shed their robes and left their racist ways. That's how we do things in a free society. Also, the idea that if an entire town does not want to serve me, therefore there's some moral wrong committed. Look, being inconvenienced is not being morally something. It's not a moral wrong. I don't have a right to be convenienced. This is why the progressive idea of freedom is bogus.
What if it was a hospital?
They believe. Well, and I'll go find someone who will serve me.
You'll
What if it was
die.
the whole
No,
state?
seriously. No,
What
no,
if it's the
I
whole
wouldn't.
state?
No. Again,
So
and
can I just say to Christian
okay,
who asked?
hold on, let me finish. So what you guys are doing right now
Askers?
is what? No, hold on. What you guys are doing right
Askers?
now is what? No, let me finish.
Sure.
What you guys are doing right now is what Ayn Rand termed lifeboat ethics. You are making ethically absurd situations to argue against a matter which in almost every other situation is ethically justified and it would have absolutely
What
no
you've been doing
inconvenience
all
anyone.
night.
No,
Segregation
no.
literally
Your entire
ended
existence.
Guys, let him finish, or we're gonna have to talk about this
Let me
for the rest of the
finish.
day, and I want to talk about this. Okay,
Let me finish.
Continue.
First of all, segregation was both a private and a public thing.
By the way, Christian, wait, one
instituted-
question. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you now, and I shouldn't do
Yes.
that. But Christian,
Yes.
would you actually want to debate this specific topic with somebody at a further date, 1v1, where you don't have to?
Oh,
deal
sure,
with
why
people like
not?
this?
I would
Okay.
love to.
I would
No,
love to
sure.
What a
actually set
legend.
that up.
What a
Okay.
legend.
Continue
Folks
that.
already think I'm nuts, but guess what? I'm willing to be ridiculed for my convictions because I believe they're morally correct.
What a legend.
So segregation was both a private and a public thing. It was public in terms of the black codes and the various laws which restricted black folks from public institutions and restricted them from public life. Those were repealed in the Civil Rights Act, and that is good. I'm happy that those things were repealed. My problem is trying to force private individuals to like you through coercion. That's when I have a problem because that's a different realm. The government is governed by a constitution which has equal protection under law. Therefore, desegregation is unjust. But private individuals are not necessarily governed by that same set of obligations. A business owner does not have an obligation to serve me just because I exist. If that is the case, then a Jewish bakery should have to serve a Nazi just because he exists. But of course, conscience in the heart is what matters. So as a matter of conscience, I don't want the Jewish baker serving the Nazi if he doesn't want to, and I don't want a homophobic baker serving me if he doesn't want to. I will go elsewhere. Any attempt to use lifeboat ethics to destroy this very practical principle is absurd.
But if there's nowhere else to go, Christian,
And
No, just
okay,
stop giving him
and
fuel, IRI. No.
what do you mean?
You're gonna let him keep
I
going for
did
another
want to
10
say
minutes.
we had to wrap this
Okay.
topic up. I'm sure that most people in here have like problems with that position, but that's another thing for a different day. And now I want to set that up because the
love
gay
you,
cake debate is a debate of the times. But let's wrap this up, and so we're going to have people give closing statements before I finally make the big announcement on the 1 year anniversary of something that I'm very happy to talk about in a second. MPU, you start up the wrap ups.
Muted MPU.
Mike.
Oh,
Muted.
shit.
Dude, I can't even hear you, and I know it's muted.
Thank you very much. The policies of the Trump administration were pretty effective for both the economy for individuals in the United States. Nearly every metric that was measurable was an improvement. COVID was the magic pill, no pun intended, the Democrats needed, including Bill Maher, that they said was necessary for him to get out of office. They tried to impeach him twice because they said if we don't impeach him, Cedric Richmond, if we don't impeach him, Green said, if we don't impeach him, run again. They're desperately afraid of somebody who basically, whatever you like or don't like about the man personally, he basically said, I'm going to do things in a different way for the people who have been, quote unquote, forgotten by politicians who come around every 2 or 4 years, asking for a vote, promising the world, delivering nothing. Every metric, look it up, every metric was more positively influenced. And just because you give a billionaire a tax break that makes them keep more of the money that they earned, it didn't affect anybody else below the line. It is not game theory. We don't need to take everything from one group of people and bribe a whole class of voters to do the exact same thing, which is to keep me in power, right? This is what politicians do. Okay? So Trumpism isn't about Donald Trump. It is about the construct of enabling people to be free, an equal opportunity sense. There are obviously disparities among people. Some people have more talent, some more skill. Some people like me are way better looking, okay, and have nice beards, okay? And unfortunately, some of you people can't be that way. But it doesn't make you bad people, and I'm not here to prop you up until you get a beard as nice as mine. Trumpism is about having the equality of opportunity to make your way and to do it in a way that hopefully sees a government that has less intrusive reach into your daily life. And honestly, you can't say that about any Democrat since John F. Kennedy.
All right. Thanks, MPU. We're now going to send it over to Splunker.
He called me out. Dude, okay, thank you very much. First of all, on this closing argument, I have to say, again, as I started this way and I will end this way. I'm a fucking Canadian. You don't give a fuck what I talk about. So I made a joke about it. Muhammad Ali versus Trump. The Rock versus Trump. It's fine. My opinion, we'll make it quick, right? Trump ain't shit. That's all. That's my argument. We don't give a shit about Trump. But what we are against, me, Chancellor, the army, those who are for freedom, we're against authoritarianism. So if Trump means he opposes something more authoritarian than him, who cares? It's a hockey game, really, for me. And so, really, as a Canadian, I don't want to put too much, opinion into it because really, you would all steam in anger and not give a fuck about what I have to say. So I understand. All I want to say is thank you for having me on a show. I'm not really a usual guest here, but you're having me on a show where it's a 1-year anniversary of something. Fuck, thanks, bro. Next guy, bro. Thank you.
Taft.
Yeah, I'm tired. I'm tired of trading the White House every 4 to 8 years between two parties. And meanwhile, the culture just moves further and further left. I think that if you want real change, if you want to put up a real challenge to the progressive movement, I think you have to start culture first. I think you need an intellectual movement first. And you have to be willing to not just not go for these silly 4-year presidencies that don't actually do or achieve anything. I think Trump is a narcissistic buffoon. I think that his main goal in going into politics, into the presidency, is to inflate his own ego and his brand. And so I don't see much reason to be a fan of Trump or to support his politics. I on like a practical level, I don't think there's a reason for conservatives to do it, because I think that they need to focus on the bigger picture. And obviously, for progressives, they don't want to do it either. So I don't think that Trump is good for the country, and I won't vote for him. I don't think that he should run. He should let a more competent leader run.
Gonna throw it now over to Josie.
Hello, and Dylan, thank you for having me on the panel today. I agree with what Taft said. I think
Longer.
Donald Trump is a dangerous person to be in office, and I really do truly believe that he is a danger to our democracy, especially since it was never addressed, but the attacks on our democracy that happened when he was trying to leave, considering trying to steal the voting machines with the military and things of that nature. And yeah, and I just want to say, Mr. More Perfect Union, I'm proud that I zapped off my beard. I zapped it off with fire, and so sorry, beards
You
aren't a
look good.
measurement here.
You look
Thank
good.
you, thank you, I appreciate
You
that.
look better. Yeah, you look better without a beard. I'll give you that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Anyways, I will say this last point for Christian. It's like when you're talking about legislating values, I know talking about Donald Trump tried to legislate a lot of values, especially with, trying to teach certain things in education, trying to say that immigrants were a danger, trying to like coerce people into being afraid of people that are from not in this country. I think that Donald Trump's probably one of the most egregious people when it comes to legislating values and more people. So with that, I am Josie Rose C. You can find me on Twitch at Josie Rose C. You can also follow my Discord at the Love Nest. So it was a pleasure. And if you like my content is political streaming type of stuff. And I'm also a lead trans researcher for trans issues in the country. So we always talk about trans stuff. So we didn't get to talk about that, but if you want to jump into my channel, you can learn more.
Okay. Now I'm going to throw it over to Lumi.
This is just our ending statement on this topic, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I thought it was over after this.
There's the estate tax
I
thing.
think we've got to talk about estate tax.
Oh, shoot.
Which-
I'm
Let's
sorry for
fucking go.
Don't
Yeah, let's
worry.
go.
I will
I
try
did
to.
research on estate
That's
tax.
the one I
Wait,
want.
wait. Trump
Wait,
sucks.
stop. 1 second.
Trump sucks.
Wait. What I'm gonna do for that, since I know a lot of people want to go to sleep, is
Oh, really?
is I will try to keep the estate tax conversation as short as possible. What I'll do is I'll make like intros like 30 seconds long, possibly 20 to 25 minutes of back and forth, and a cutoff, since most topics go on much longer than that, since a lot of people want to go to sleep. But Lumi, you can continue.
Okay.
Trump sucks.
Okay.
It's true.
Rhizome?
Yeah, for sure. Trump sucks. I would love to like have a discussion about how we should like on the left galvanize the voter base more as opposed to placating the more moderate factions and trying to bring people over from the right. I think that that would be the most successful strategy, is to push people to the polls and get people who normally don't see the benefit of electoralism to feel that. So I think a populist platform would be beneficial for us. It would be great to see that happen.
Okay.
Rhizome, do you apologize to me?
No, Splonker. I stand by my words. My racism,
Okay.
I stand by it.
Okay, we're throwing it over to IRI.
Yeah, look, my goal is to get Joe Biden elected for a second term, and the best person to run against would be Donald Trump. He already beat him once, and Donald Trump's star is falling. There's been polls recently released that among Republicans that up to 50% of Republicans want anyone else but Trump right now. The walls are closing in. He's got criminal investigations into him in 2 states. The January 6th Select Committee is going to reveal a whole bunch of stuff that's not going to go over well. So I'm all for draining the swamp and finishing the wall. So Trump 2024, let's go. Get him. Woo!
Gonna throw it over to Christian.
Yeah. Trump. I don't even know what to say. Trump's not the issue. Well, maybe he. I don't know. Okay, so I'll just be very short. Okay. Trump spoke something that is very deep in the American psyche, and it's very important that people not forget that. That's all I'll say. That's all I gotta say.
Okay, so now I'm going to take a second to talk about an announcement. Now you're gonna have to give me a second here, because this means a little bit to me. So, but I promise it's connected to this show and this programming for wider.
I appreciate you having me for this.
No problem. In 1 week, it is the 1-year anniversary of me losing my home due to a domestic violence situation. where a individual I was living with at the time tried to strangle me to death. And I did not have a place to live. I did not have a place to stay. I had no clue what was going to happen. I had to get out of the house in 20-degree weather in my pajamas with no socks on right after it rained. And I had to rely on a friend taking me away from there and letting me just crash. Just one night. And I had no idea where to go. And it was also 2 days before the debut match of the Hippy Dippy Championship, which would become my staple, my brand, my most proudest and biggest accomplishment of the thing I've done while on this platform. And in those 2 days, we snuck the computer equipment I had from my old place out of there in a pickup truck and brought it to the new place, used somebody else's internet, somebody else's place, and we still did the show. I also snuck out the championship belt. Okay, we got it out of quote-unquote enemy territory. We snuck all out, and we still had the show that was scheduled 2 days from that date. Most people thought it was off. I made sure it happened. And due to the profits that I made that day, I was able to get a home. And if it wasn't for the Hippy Dippy Championship, if it wasn't for the Hippy Dippy brand, I would not have a place to live, and I would not be a streamer, streaming full-time, and I would be where my mom was when she was a homeless resident in DC during the ending of her life, where she died while homeless 2 years before that happened. And I was looking down that same path that my mom had to travel. But this brand, this dumb little internet debate show, took me off of those streets. It helped me a lot. And I want to thank everyone who helped me get to where I am now. I want to thank Danabo. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be able to do this. I would like to thank Geek. I would like to thank Vosh and Basya for helping me launch this brand, and everybody who's ever held that belt, everybody who's ever helped me make this show, and everybody who comes here and takes time to do a 3.5-hour show every Friday. Because this not only pays my bills, it pays the bills of my editors, my team, and I know it makes a lot of people happy watching this. And the show means a lot to me. And so that is why, in 1 week, it is the anniversary of it. And I have put together the biggest Hippy Dippy show in the history of this show to be the anniversary of that sad day that helped launch the championship. It's going to be called Hippy Dippy Mania, and we have 5 hours of back-to-back debates. We have CTV versus Destiny for the Hippy Dippy Championship. We have Stardust versus Regneck on the fundamental of racism in a cage match. We have the debut of the Hippy Dippy Tag Team titles with established tag teams. One of them called the Market Justice Warriors. It's going to be very interesting. And a separate mystery match we have yet to even announce. And this is all going to be revealed in the coming days. And I just want to thank everybody for being fans of the Hippy Dippy Roundtable, being fans of the Hippy Dippy Championship, and this crazy journey we've been on in the last 1 to 2 years. 2 years for Hippy Dippy and 1 year for the championship. And without this show, I would probably not have anything at the moment. I wouldn't have had a place to stay and live, and I wouldn't be able to do it with my own hands. And there is a certain pride I take that I was able to get out of that situation with my own hands with the help of many, many amazing people out there. And so that's the anniversary in 1 week. And that's why we're going to put on the best fucking show we've ever put on in the history of this program. And so I'm excited. Thank you.
I'm excited for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations, man. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Congrats, bro.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Hey, way to take that capitalism all the way forward, man. Good job.
Yeah!
No problem.
100%.
So let's wrap up the last topic of the night after the announcement, and it's the estate tax, also known as the death tax. Very simple. Do you support it or are you against it? Let's keep the intros very short, seeing as many of us want to go to bed. 30 seconds. We're gonna throw it over to Christian to start us off.
Against it. I'm against all taxation, but that doesn't move the conversation forward. So the estate tax. If I agree to give someone something upon my dying, and it's in my will, that's a contract between me and them. For the government to go in between that is to break the contract, and if you believe in contracts, then you shouldn't believe in the estate tax. Simple.
Okay. We're going to now throw it over to IRI.
I just think the estate tax being only applicable to people who have $12 million a year or whatever is ridiculous. If you believe in the American dream where everybody has a chance, then you should believe in the redistribution of wealth. It's okay to take care of your kids, but you don't need to give them every single dollar you made, and let some other people have a shot at things. So that's where I come from on it.
Now I'm going to throw it over to Josie.
Yeah, I agree that we need the estate tax, and I also believe that we should lower the cap and actually increase it, because I don't think we should be dealing with arbitrary contracts when we have the whole thing of serving society on a moral level. We don't use arbitrary pieces of paper to make things happen.
Oh,
see what I did there? See what I did?
One last thing I forgot to mention. I know many of you know Lycan. Okay. Probably one of my great friend of mine. Some of you don't know Lycan, but when I didn't have a place to stay, and my monitor broke when we were transporting all the gear to make Hippy Dippy happen, and he went out and bought me a new monitor and asked nothing in return so I could host the program as well. And that's something I've never said publicly, and he even told me not to mention it, but I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm sorry. Okay, I want to mention it a year later that you did that for me, and I really appreciate that. And you're a great human being, and I appreciate that a lot. And okay, now we can throw it to Lumiro.
Lumi.
Intros.
Oh shit. Estate tax, silver spoon tax. Yes, please. If you believe America is a meritocracy, then you don't want people landing in ridiculous amounts of wealth. And as IRI already noted, it is at $12 million at this point. You have to have $12 million, like $24 million if you're married, for this to even fucking hit you. I'm not out here trying to be a bootlicker anytime soon. I would like people to have a fair starting rounds, personally. So hell yes, tax that silver spoon. Let's go, baby.
Throw it over to Rhizome.
Yeah, wealthy people use governmental infrastructure to accumulate their wealth and therefore should not be able to just hoard and extract riches while the system doesn't see any benefit from it, especially when generational wealth is a major contributor or major indicator of what people's outcomes will be when they grow up, what their social mobility will be like. So yeah, let's all benefit from people being able to profit off of our economy. Yeah.
Throwing it over to Taft.
Great. The estate tax, the death tax, is a completely nonsense, disastrous policy. It encourages short-term consumption and discourages long-term investment. This hurts wages for the most vulnerable people in society. It also hurts long-term economic growth. It's a tax on the American dream. It discourages, intergenerational accumulation of wealth, especially in communities that are, have not historically had access to that. So I think that if you want better wages, better economy, less wealth gap between racial groups, I think it's a no-brainer. You have to oppose this kind of tax. That's all.
Throwing it over now to Splunker.
Not to make it boring to people, but yeah, I would be opposed to those types of taxes, but I do agree that intergenerational wealth is kind of, there's some unfairness that goes with it. So I would just simply oppose it. Due to but what I would oppose is the systems that we already have in place that makes the wealth accumulation already unhealthy and unequal, and there's a lot of things already previously that I would attack rather than a taxation on intergenerational wealth. But although if there's a limit on the amount, Let's just leave me as a neutral. Yes, leave me neutral because I do understand that, especially now through the COVID pandemic, there's a lot of wealth that has been accumulated that has been warranted. It has been there's a lot of argumentations that can be had depending on the angle you take part in. It depends. It really does depend on the scenario. I can't really take a hard stance. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, now over to MPU.
Yeah, so it's a pretty short take. Taxing somebody on wealth that has already been taxed is immoral. It is simply an excuse by those in power to have a wealth resource that they can use to justify bribing poor people to vote for them for the free shit that they're going to hand out. And then furthermore, it is a bit problematic when we say we want to have an equal opportunity society, but yet we promote policies that instill classism in the poor, thinking that, well, that rich guy, he doesn't need all that money. But earn your own way. Do your best.
Fuck the poors.
And it's not fuck. Look, this is an opening, but since you're doing that, I'll go ahead and be done, and I'll just answer your challenge, Rhizome.
Go for it.
So here's the gig. Okay, when a person gets out and works, when a person doesn't have kids before the age of 20, when a person has a high school education, okay, they are vastly more likely to end up in a positive way. They may not be a billionaire, they may not be a millionaire, but they usually will have a relatively successful life. Okay,
yeah, and we're all set up
and
equally to do that
stop.
right now. You're right.
Let me respond. Okay, when people think that they can't get ahead because somebody else has gotten more than them, that it's somehow a zero-sum game. Okay, that that the pie is only X big, and unless you take something from somebody else, you can't get ahead. That is a false assertion, and people that believe that actually they try to create harm within the economy because they create this classism crap. Okay, and as far as generational wealth, the vast majority of generational wealth, if people inherit wealth within 2 generations, that wealth is gone. Okay, historically, and then finally, okay. Finally, when you look at how government actually funds itself, that there is not that much value in the estate tax. It literally is used. It was put into place purely as a wealth redistribution mechanism, and that is something that the founders did not believe in.
Yeah, they also believed in slavery.
Oh, jeez.
It's true. That's logically consistent.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the fundamental rub. Is that like if you
let's
are
just
someone
stick to this topic by itself, okay?
Yeah, guys,
Right,
you bootstraps, okay?
You invoke the founders.
Well, I'll throw it over to Christian because Christian was following the rules. Yeah.
Yeah, I've just got I got 3 questions for people who are in support of this. Number 1, how is a contract between 2 or more people, particularly in a family, arbitrary, but a contract between those people in this amorphous 330 million plus people society is not? Number two, I forgot my point. No, actually, I didn't actually. Number 2, okay, everyone uses government infrastructure. How does that obligate different people to do different things when they never asked for the government infrastructure? They were just born into it. We were just born into society. So how is it just to demand something of someone due to something that they never asked to receive? And more generally, what provides me, why do I have a moral obligation to give things to people who I do not consort with? Why do I have a moral obligation? Why do I have a moral obligation to give things to people who I do not consort with?
They're your fellow Americans.
Christian,
what do you mean?
they
You want them to
believe the
suffer?
end result is good. That's what they're gonna say. Like their
and it's called
morality is just different than yours.
Oh no, we're them, you guys. Watch out.
Consequentialism is wrong. It's wrong, and I'm not going to argue on morally incorrect ground. I have no obligation to give some random person my money. I don't.
Equal opportunity is bullshit. It's equal. We need to look at the outcome.
Yeah,
I agree
let's
with you.
I mean,
actually
if
talk about like the economic effects of this tax, right?
if you want to argue
Because
consequentialism, Taft, be my guest, but you're fighting on their ground.
well,
So I
here's the
don't.
deal. We're
We
just going
want
to
to
be at
talk
an
about death
impasse. We're going
tax.
to be like we're going to be at an impasse if we're just going back
Right.
and forth on like the morality. Because like the fundamental reality is that these people, the progressives on the panel right now, are just going to tell you it's legitimate to violate this like implied contract between family members if it's for the benefit of
Why?
society. So let's
You
actually
have
talk
to have
about
a
like
good reason.
whether or not it's a
Of
benefit
course.
to society, which it's not. Like let's talk
But
about
what?
the way that this tax actually plays out in the real world. And that's
But,
that when you know someone is going to pass away, going to die, and going to pass on their inheritance to someone, what they're
Depends
encouraged
who,
to
though.
do is to liquidate assets from their estate and to consume, right?
That's
They're
a good
not
thing.
incentivized
Put
to
it in a trust.
invest,
Yeah.
right? And when you invest, you put that money into the economy, and you create jobs for people. You create
Sometimes it's the
wages for
opposite,
people.
though,
Why,
Taft.
why
No,
can't you
it's
ask the
not the
question?
opposite.
Because you
What
put
are-
it into a bank
what is the
account that
range?
never
No,
sees the
because
light
if you
of
put it
day.
into
What
a
is-
bank account, it gets taxed.
What's the
That's
range?
the problem. So they want to avoid the task. So they liquidate these
Yes,
assets and they
I would
just
rather
consume
it go
things.
into the economy and actually pay somebody for something
I
rather than
agree.
billions
Oh
of
my God,
dollars
we
sitting
agree.
in the background.
Yes,
That's
I
what I'm
agree.
saying.
And
We need to
that's
pull
why
that out
we
and
need
make
to
it be
encourage
used for the
people to
economy.
invest money, right? Invest money in the long term and not engage in this short-term
But
consumption.
that's are you
Taft,
talking
do you
about
have any
like
numbers on this? Because when I've looked into this, it seems what you're talking about is a myth, and it seems like there's no actual substantiation of
are you
this.
talking about like
Yes, I will
investments
say
in
because
stocks?
the
That's
reality is
speculative
that
instruments.
Okay,
the
then
estate
just
tax,
substantiate it. Yeah.
yeah, the estate tax as it exists now is basically like totally like incompetent and ineffective at actually raising taxes in the way that it's supposed to. And it's because of things like the stepped up loophole, right? Which is like this loophole about capital gains and when you receive a stock versus when you sell it, right? Where a lot of people who should be taxed under the estate tax are basically paid nothing, right? And so what you end up is this like you have this massive infrastructure of like estate tax lawyers who are really the ones benefiting from this policy, whereas the very richest people, they use this loophole to get out of it. So it's not an effective tax as
Is
written.
this speculation or is this borne out in evidence?
No, this actually happens. Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
can we see the evidence then?
Yeah, so Google just
Oh.
up the stepped up basis or the stepped up tax loophole.
But-
And
but-
basically it's a loophole in like capital gains where
Yeah.
if you receive a stock at like $19 and you sell it at like $20, you're only taxed on that like $1, even if the other person who like delivered you the stock got it for like $1, 50 years ago. Right. And so the result is that like very little taxes are actually being levied in this way. So you're right that like the tax basically doesn't do anything, but that's because it's not effective. If it were effective, it would be bad. So yeah.
Taft, can I ask you a question? So you're asking about like investments, and when I hear investments in speculative, such as like stock or putting things
sir.
into like things that are basically not going into the economy, right? Like the investment doesn't actually make anybody else wealthier except for the people who are investing in them and the banking institutions that make value on those investments, right? So the situation for me is I'd rather see that wealth get distributed into the economy so we can actually
whisper
have
me
like
the
people
link?
buy things, right? And like you want people to buy things. You want people.
Put the link in the Discord chat where we're already in. I think that makes the most sense.
Yeah. So basically, like the whole situation about investment, I just don't buy the premise that investments actually build economic growth. What we know does build economic growth is actually putting money into the economy and buying actual assets of things and actual real things. So that's what I'm trying to say is
What
like
do you think
I don't see the
investment
stock
is?
market. That's what I'm telling you. Investment like is like stock and like mutual funds and things like that don't actually benefit anybody except for the ultra wealthy.
Oh my God. Okay. So when we're talking about investment, especially in the case of estate taxes, we're talking about so much more than like liquid assets, like stocks or cash, right? We're actually talking about physical assets, like business assets. So what we want is for people to grow businesses, to onboard more employees, to create more products at a cheaper price for people. We want them to grow the economy, basically. And so what
But
you
they
do,
don't.
no, here's what you do.
The
Oh my
kids.
God.
They
Let me just
don't.
finish.
Look at the
Okay,
Tax Cuts
Josie,
and Jobs Act. It was a
let me
failure.
fucking finish. Okay, Josie, if you have an estate tax, what you incentivize is people putting their money into stocks and then avoiding the tax through the stepped up loophole, right? That's what happens if you have an estate tax in the way that it is now, because people put that money into stocks. And by the way, you're so wrong about how stocks works, but like just ignoring that, allowing them to be in stocks is how they avoid the tax, right? So if you get
Taft,
rid of
you
the
keep
tax,
citing the step up loophole, but you don't say how many people are using it or what percentage of like the taxable wealth that goes into it. Would you know? Like you're not
Hold
giving
on.
us actual numbers.
Taft, can I
don't
get?
know what
I
to
want to
tell
zoom
you.
out a second.
Yeah.
It seems like you're against the estate tax because of loopholes. Shouldn't we try to close loopholes and
No.
keep the estate tax?
No,
No, she thinks
because
it'll
the
be a
estate
disaster
tax
if they fix the loophole.
encourages short-term consumption. So
But
what
that's a
happens
good
as
thing.
people are no, it's not a good thing. We want long-term investment in the economy, right? And the way that that happens is by preserving business and estate assets, right? That are productive and producing things. And so what happens is if you have this estate tax, what you encourage people to do is liquidate those assets and then, consume things while they're alive.
We get that you think people will use this loophole. You have not shown that people are using this loophole to a point that it's detrimental.
do it all the
It's
time.
very well established that this loophole. I could show you.
Then we close the loophole.
Okay, then we close the loophole and we benefit.
Well,
Yeah.
Let's close. Hey, I tell you what. Let's close all loopholes and reduce the tax rates. Let's even go even further. Okay. Let's say for all tax rates, everybody pays the same rate after we've exempted food, clothing, and shelter, transportation to your job. Let's say that. And that way, when your government officials come up to you and they say, well, we want to do a new program that's going to benefit 10% of the people in this country, but everybody's going to have to pay for it, including the 10%. Okay. Then you're like, well, hang on. Maybe we might rethink our strategy about how fast and how strong we grow the government. Okay. This is the tax. I agree that the whole construct, right, of having a tax law system that is set up and then having myriad numbers of loopholes is problematic. Okay. And Josie, just to kind of tie in her point about like you want that money to be invested in the economy, not buying things. Consumerism drives like demand, but it doesn't drive supply to the extent that putting your money in if you hang on a second. You could buy a boat, okay, with your money, right? To avoid paying the estate tax. You could buy a boat, but guess what? You could also invest in the company that makes the boat that then employs 100 people who all get a wage and they get to have money. It's called churn, right?
Nobody does that.
When we put dollars, we call the acceleration of how money is actually how it works its way through the economy. And it is better to invest in companies that create things than it is to simply just say, spend your money.
But so you're saying you'd rather not have a car, you would rather give the company the money instead?
I'm against the tax. I'm against specifically I'm against the death tax because you've already paid taxes on it. There's a difference between the construct of what you provide taxation on in terms of assets that have grown, right? We're not talking about long-term capital gains. We're literally saying this is the value of the estate. And then the estate has to pay taxes if it's over 12 million. Some people want to actually bring it down. Lumi Rue wants to,
I do too.
That somebody want to you want to bring it down to like 3 million, I think. And that's actually been argued by the Biden administration. They want it to go down very, very low. Okay. And the idea is that they want to use that.
Countries.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what other countries are. It's what we have here. Okay. That matters. And then the last thing that I'll throw at it here is that when we talk about how money gets transferred around and how it gets spent and how it gets allocated, there can be no question, okay, that the way we structure loopholes in tax law in this place benefits those who have enough disposable income to buy tax lawyers. The rest of us don't get any value out of it, right? We're the ones, even when we sell our stocks and bonds, we're the ones that are going to get hit harder than guys who can afford it, right? So just do away with all the loopholes.
Wait, who is we?
And then make everybody.
I mean,
okay, you're
also
talking about
explain-
all the loopholes. I see what you're saying.
All loopholes and all tax, right? Just have one simple tax structure. No, I didn't
That's
say
not realistic.
No,
that's not
government
realistic,
needs
MPU.
Stop. We're talking about prescriptive dynamics.
I'm sorry.
Here, right?
I just want
You're
to
talking
explain
for 10
something to
minutes
show
straight.
see,
God forbid
like
somebody
an
else speaks.
economic
It wasn't 10
concept.
minutes straight, and you interrupt. You are the worst
Of course,
interrupter
I
ever.
have to
like-
interrupt.
You're the
I like
worst
the
You talk
interrupter.
forever.
But
You
you're
won't
not
shut
adding
up.
anything to the
course I
conversation
have
when you just open your fat trap.
We all agree.
Congratulations, you got a big mouth.
Stop. Look, we all agree that the
Listen.
best interrupters are the trucker convoy. Actually, okay, they interrupted the movement of trade. I'm sorry. Okay, I just had to get that one in there. Okay, continue.
I just want to
And
say
if I
that
can
MPU's
clarify-
attitude is not matching that peaceful background of his right now. I think he needs to chill out a little bit.
If I can just clarify, like,
no,
a
I'm
concept
super
for
chill.
Drink
Let's
it
go
talking
ahead and
that.
hear after.
Let Taft go. I want to hear what Taft.
Yeah, because I think we can like maybe come to some more agreement. When you buy something like a boat, right, or a car or something, that's the kind of thing that is a depreciating asset. And similarly, I mean, if you just like are buying money on expensive food, like the kind of things that you're consuming but aren't going to become long-term productive assets. So when you have an estate tax,
Well, hold on 1 second. I want to push back on that because
Yeah,
what about
sure.
the person who did the labor, then buys something for their family and all of those things? Like that actually does have rippling effects, right? Like I'm talking
the
about that
acceleration of
type of
money.
economic, the acceleration of money. Thank you. So it's the economic rolling of that thing. You buy that one asset, the people who had to put that car together get labor money for labor, and then it goes to their families, and then that dollar goes a lot further than the one thing that we do with the assets, and that's what I mean by
No,
that.
because the
Started-
assets, you're
it's
still
what
buying
Josie
something,
had
right?
started.
It's a measure of what you're buying. So if you're investing in your company, for example, you're buying like new machinery, you're, hiring people, onboarding them to help out with accounting or, whatever marketing, any of the various roles. In
I
a
agree
company.
with all
These are all
that.
forms of like investment in a company, right? So you're still giving money to people, but the distinction is like what you're buying, right? And so if you're buying an asset that is short term, if it's the kind of thing that's going to be depreciated and consumed, it's meant for like the rich person to just like have more fun before they die, basically, because they know the money's going to get taxed. So what they do is they just like spend their money, or they're incentivized
that's
to
a
just
good
like
thing.
spend it. It would be better if they invested money
In what?
in companies,
The company
in
that
Well,
makes
that's
long-term
the thing they would
assets.
otherwise
that's
buy.
still, but that's what I'm talking about. Even if you're investing in buying machinery
Oh
for
my
a
God.
company, that's still spending money right then, right? What I'm against is like buying stocks and things like that and just holding them there and just
Yes.
waiting for
Well,
it.
but the
That
money
doesn't
you
help the
invest in
economy.
companies allows them to go buy the machinery to make the boat. So you're right and you're wrong, Josie. Right?
Okay.
Investing in companies, investing in companies allows them, to grow. If they can grow, that means they hire more people, they make more things, other people, and if there's more things, then they are then there will be
But the stock
competition. There
doesn't
will
go
be
to the
price
It's about
company.
competition.
long-term
There will be
versus like
more
short-term.
people working.
The only
And
time
so,
that the
like, the
stock money goes to
short-term-
a company is through an IP when they IPO, right? That's the
Okay,
time the
Josie,
company ever gets
I'll
money.
pose you a
Any
hypothetical.
The stock is
Put
just
your-
for investors.
Put your brain in the brain of like a rich person. You're super wealthy.
Man, I
You
wish
know
I could do
there's-
that.
Yeah, right. Exactly, amazing.
As long as
You've
she's
got
hot.
this estate tax. She's gorgeous, super hot.
Okay, great.
right?
Yes.
And so
Then.
you know that you've got this estate tax. You're aging.
brain?
You know that you're going to die. So what do? Do you invest in these assets that are going to be productive long after your death? Or do you cash out? Do you go on like a wild bender? Do you have fun while you're around? And
I've
that
thought
money
about
goes
this.
into
I've
yeah,
thought about
and
this. What I
so
would do is I'd
when
create
you-
a foundation that is legally and contractually obligated to either build other smaller businesses or do nonprofit work at a scale that actually employs people at a generated scale. That's how I would do it. I'd create a foundation. It'd be the
So I love
Josie
you,
Caballero
Josie,
Foundation.
because
Yeah.
I think that's a
You recognize
great
that a
movement.
death
I think
tax
that's
actually
a
precludes that from happening.
long-term.
No, it
I
doesn't.
think that's a long-term goal. You're creating
does.
something that's going to last long after you die, that's going to benefit many people. And I think that's a great mindset. The problem is that when you tell people that you're going to take a significant portion of their estate after they die, a lot of people are not as morally virtuous as you. And what they're going to do is they're just going to consume and
I
blow their
want
money
that
now.
though. That's
You-
okay too.
You want
The
them
way
to
that
consume.
the way the
and-
I
estate
want them to
tax
consume.
the way estate
Ooh,
tax
okay.
law
I would
works.
prefer if they invested in the long-term future.
I
in
would
the
too, but
economy.
if they're not and they're just going to consume, if they're just going to invest for themselves and family and not build that money into the economy, I'd rather than just blow it
Here's
into
the
the
thing,
economy.
taxes can be great, but we need
Wait,
to do
okay.
taxes
This is
right.
why-
Here, I have a
And so-
genuine.
This is
Wait, I have
why-
a question though. Okay, so them blowing it though, right? For example, I would say actually blowing it, right, helps
Yeah.
a lot of young entrepreneurs,
Mm,
right?
mhm,
Who
mhm.
you know, a lot of people who are very interested in the Coke market, which has been
No,
affected by
God.
inflation.
Stop that. You're
What?
memeing me.
I'm sorry. I'm
No, it's
looking out
okay,
for the
like-
young entrepreneur.
The people on the street,
Looking out for the man on my street corner.
right?
That's fair. That's fair. Mhm.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that like taxes can be really good, but like when we talk about tax policy, it's about finding taxes that are going to be most efficient. And I think the estate tax, if you want to create redistributive wealth, the estate tax is just not the way to do it. And so there are much better taxes that'll bring you a lot further. So that would be my position.
Well, lay it on us. What should I
Democrats are
do if I
thinking
want a
about all of those.
progressive
So,
redistributive tax?
Negative
from-
income tax.
She's gonna answer that question and get into detail during outros because it is getting wrap up time, and I can watch Christian
Okay.
slowly melt right now. I'm watching him like melt into his seat, just thinking about bedtime. So I'm gonna let us
It
all
looks on to
take
me.
sleep, and I'll make
I'm
sure.
thinking about a lot of stuff right now. So, man.
So I'll let Taft give the first answer.
Oh dear.
Since you were just going to talk about what you were going to talk about, and remember, everybody, shout yourselves out.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate quickly. I think that like estate tax is not the best kind of tax. If you want a redistributive policy, there's better options out there. I think it, like I said, encourages short-term consumption, discourages long-term investment, and ultimately this depresses wages, depresses economic growth. I'm sympathetic to some of the moral arguments. I think we should be encouraging people to try to succeed and have the most money possible when they die. I think it's good. We should encourage people to success, right? That's the tax argument. In regards to other stuff, Halftage, you should follow me. I post politics stuff and sexy pictures online.
Okay, now we're gonna go
So
over
do I.
to the biggest star of our show, the Spelunker.
Oh shit. Listen, I'm pro everything, really, and I'm also pro nothing. What I'm for is for a voluntary system, and so right now, really, things have happened. Right? We would agree, right? We've disagreed on many things, but we'll agree on this. Things have happened over the course of many years. COVID and whatnot. So, wealth tax, inheritance tax, depends on who, depends on what the conditions are. I don't know. I mean, we're not here long enough for us to go that deep. In my opinion, I haven't gone that deep. I can't agree or disagree. I'm gonna stay neutral. But what I'm going to say is that, hey, I'm a legend, right? I'm the Splunker. Everybody knows who I am, right? I'm legendary. And then we got me. I'm a co-host of a podcast called The Chance of Flurry Show. Flurry is spelled Fluri, right? And we're no ordinary guys. We're two guys who are anti-authoritarianism, basically libertarian anarchists. We don't give a fuck about authoritarianism. Sir, we're against racism. I'm looking at you. Whatever
shit,
your name
dude.
is. We're, is it Rhizome?
Oh,
We're
shit.
strictly anti-racism. So if you want to follow us, we're also pro-comedy. It's really a comedy show, guys. Really, come on and have some laughs. And all I gotta say is thank you for having.
Is it because a joke hosts it?
What did you say?
Don't worry about it. Continue.
No, you need to repeat that.
I didn't say anything. Okay, I'm just
Who
joking.
said what? Who?
It was racist. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it was racist.
The racism. No. Okay, so I need to specify this. I don't want to take too much time. I'm joking about the racism. Come on, really, guys. I like you guys. It was all a joke. Follow us. It's really a comedy show, Chance of Flurry, where anti-authoritarianism, libertarians, and anarchists went up. But I'm joking. I love you all.
Okay, we're gonna throw it over to More Perfect Union.
I don't know. I don't know. I follow that.
You
but
don't.
I'll lead. I'll lead with the outro. I'm the More Perfect Union. I occasionally stream here on Twitch. I'm on other platforms. Check my page out. You'll get some updates and things like that. I'm trying to branch out a little bit more. Dylan, thanks a lot for being here. With respect to the taxation, the estate tax, I think it's immoral. I think it's problematic. I think the government has way too much money since the 16th and 17th Amendments were passed. And if you need any proof more than this, it is simply this. The tax cuts that were passed under the Trump administration the following year saw more income tax revenue generated than at any time in the history of the United States, yet we still had $1 trillion deficit. The problem isn't the amount of tax money we collect. The problem is the amount of money that we spend. And until we get politicians who will be statesmen and women, okay, and rein and restrain themselves, it doesn't matter what tax policies we have. They will all be confiscatory and they will all be problematic.
Legend.
Okay, throwing it over to Rhizome.
Yeah, so I want to just live in a world where people have more equal opportunity. And I think the first step in doing that is making sure that we can redistribute wealth and stop contributing to the wealth disparity in the country. Once people get wealthy, I think that, we shouldn't just allow them to hoard it for generation after generation. Anyways, I'm Rhizome on Twitch, RHYZOHM. I like to meme. I like to have fun. I like to joke. I'm a lefty who can joke. Go figure. And yeah, it was a lot of fun tonight.
He's also a racist.
True.
Based and true.
Very true.
True.
Very racist. Very racist. Gonna throw it over to Lumiru.
I support the silver spoon tax, but I'm always down to talk about other ways of redistributing wealth. And I think taxes are good, actually. So that's where I'm at in this boat.
Sure.
I'm Lumiru. You can find me on twitch.tv/Lumiru, all over different social media platforms at Lumiru Love, L-U-V, not the L-O-V-E. And join us tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Time at my channel to talk about sex and philosophy and fetishization of different bodies throughout history. I'd love to have you there. Thanks for having me, Dylan
Gross.
and everyone. I
Happy
appreciate
to have you
it.
on. Gonna throw it over to Josie. All you Coomers in chat, you go to that, okay? I'm throwing it over to Josie.
Yeah, I will be there.
No, I cannot see it. Don't go there, you asshole.
I'm going there.
So
He's going.
I agree with Lumi. I love the silver spoon tax idea. I also think that there are more creative ways that we can actually do actual redistribution of wealth. I think it's a really important concept, considering we have in history the largest hoarding of wealth that we have ever seen in modern human history on the planet. So we need to make sure that people have equal opportunity to that and equal opportunity to equity. So I'm Josie. You can find me on Twitch at Josie Rose. You can also follow me on my Discord at discord.gg/lovenest. I do a lot of variety content. I do reactions. I do political content, and I do a lot of trans rights content. Because if you haven't tell, I'm a trans girl. But I
couldn't tell
all of you. I know, right? Thank you. I appreciate it. The flag kind of gives it away. It's just where all the hot people come from. That's where that country represents. But anyways, I really enjoyed it, Dylan, and I want to say a big congratulations to all of your success over the year. It's been a pleasure to see you thrive, because you are an inspiration for people. When things get low, you can come out. And I think that you being on this platform shows that, and you give inspiration to a lot of people on this platform. So I'm happy to know you, and I want to thank you for inviting me on from time to time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm gonna throw it now over to Christian.
All right. Just one last word on this entire matter. I think any conversation we've seen phrases like redistributing the wealth, hoarding the wealth, and these are all concepts that connect to a broader philosophy. Any conversation that willfully ignores philosophy and uncritically accepts the premises of either people's side without questioning them is a conversation that does everyone a disservice and that misses the entire point of accruing knowledge. So I think philosophy is important for any debate, any conversation, and I think that if anyone rejects that, they're really missing the bigger picture. But I'm Christian Watson. I am the host of the Christian Watson YouTube channel, which you can just find by typing in Christian Watson on YouTube. You can follow me at
Did you just release your first YouTube video in like 4 or 5 months?
What's that?
Did you just release your first video on it in a very long time, like 4 or 5 months?
Yeah. So I've been on a I've been on hiatus for about 4 months, and so I'm coming back. I think this weekend. It depends what my mood is, but I think this weekend. So you can just go to Christian Watson and follow me there. You can also go on Twitter, which is at official C Watson, and follow me there. Dylan, thank you for doing this. Thank you for having me, and you're an inspiration, man. So keep it up.
I appreciate that. And for everybody in my community, before I throw it to IRI to wrap us up with that sultry voice of his, I want to say that this Sunday is the Dylan Burns movie nights, meaning that at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will be watching a movie. I'm thinking it's going to be a Russian movie by the name of Brat. Very good movie. I recommend everybody go see it, even if you don't watch it with us. And of course, next Friday is the 1-year anniversary Hippy Dippy Mania, biggest show we ever put on. 5 hours of content, having to start an hour early. It goes so long. Okay, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now we're gonna throw it over to IRI to wrap us up.
Sure. So quickly on the estate tax, I just think it's kind of I don't know. I think it's kind of sad to just dump a big pile of money on your kids. Don't you want them to work hard and fight and learn and struggle a little bit? So I kind of appeal to that first and foremost, and I hope my conservative friends could agree with me on that. That just spoiling your kids and next couple generations probably going to screw them over and could lead to a lot of problems. So you want them to learn how to work hard. I'm not saying they have to be uncomfortable, but let's lower the cap on that estate tax. Let's spread the wealth a little bit. Otherwise, we're going to end up like South Africa, where they have ridiculous wealth inequality, 35% unemployment. They have a bunch of strikes all the time, lack of skills, and it's bad. If you don't want to head towards socialism, then I'd be exploring more ideas of spreading the wealth, shall we say. I also want to say I had a great time chatting with everybody. I know I yell at people and stuff, but it's all for fun. And I love these people. I love people. Hey, thank you, brother. I love anyone that's passionate about politics, and it's no bad feelings at all. These are all friends, and I could easily have a beer with any of them. Dylan, thank you so much. I'd have one with you, trust. Dylan, thank you for having me. I go by I'm Really Important on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, all that. I focus on electoral politics, what's going on in the House and the Senate. Like I said, Texas is already voting. Midterms are in full swing. If you hate Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, the way to negate their vote is to get more Democratic senators. We have some opportunities coming up, so come by. We'll talk about it.
Okay, thank you all for coming on today. I appreciate every single one of you. I couldn't do this show without every single one of you coming on every Friday, and I appreciate that. And in 3 weeks, I'll be able to have a beer with you guys too, because I'll be turning 21. So I'll see you all next time.
See you, Dylan.
See you later.
Bye.
Hey, you. Yes, you. Right there. You. I am starting a Patreon. I know you guys have been asking for it on the YouTube crowd for a while, since usually it's just the Twitch people who could support me financially directly, but we're finally making a means for you guys to do so as well. And that's not all. You can support the #1 cyber terrorist, mover and shaker, Vince McMahon of Twitch politics. How? By donating to this Patreon and getting benefits like movie nights, special Discord roles, announcements at the end of the video of how much you have supported this war criminal Dylan Burns TV, and much, much more. Okay, not much more, okay? I only have limited means, but more than that, I can assure you. And if you support the Patreon, you will have my deep-hearted appreciation from the bottoms of my soul that you are truly a mover and shaker. Thanks so much for your Patreon money in advance. I will use it to continue to fund the liberal elitist agenda.